Chapter 87. On the underwater altar, the woman with the same face as Su He suddenly opened her eyes. She looked at Li Mu and gently sniffed. Li Mu's mind was in chaos. He felt that his blood, his soul, and the three spirits that he had just condensed were about to be sucked out of his body. In the next moment, a suction force came from above. His body quickly rose up. The moment he rushed out of the water, Li Mu saw the woman on the altar slowly close her eyes again. Li Mu landed on the ground in a sorry state. He looked at Su He and said in disbelief, "It's me." Su He glanced at the water and said indifferently, "To be exact, it's my physical body. The one standing in front of you now is my soul." Li Mu thought that Su He was only left with her soul. He did not expect that her physical body was still there. Moreover, it had strangely appeared on the underwater altar. That terrifying gaze just now seemed to have sucked away all of his blood essence and soul. Li Mu still had lingering fears when he thought about it. He could not help but recall the records of zombies in the monster records of the 10 continents. Jumping zombies could suck a person's blood essence and soul by biting them. Once a jumping zombie evolved into a flying stiff, it would be able to suck a person's blood essence and soul from a distance. The Su He, under the water, was definitely a mature flying zombie. After a person died, their soul would dissipate. Under a certain probability, the corpse would become a zombie. Low-level zombies did not have intelligence. However, when they evolved into a flying stiff, they could develop their own intelligence. Zombies that developed intelligence were no longer related to their original bodies. They were independent entities. For example, although Su He and the female corpse under the water came from the same source, one had inherited Su He's spirit and will, as well as all of her memories and emotions. The other had only inherited her physical body. Of course, according to common belief, the one standing in front of Li Mu was the real Su He. The one under the water was just an inhumane, evil creature. He looked at Su He and asked, "Has she already gained sentience?" Su He nodded her head and said, "20 years ago, when I died, my body sank into the river and was attracted by that strange stone platform. My soul was lucky enough to escape, but since then, I couldn't go too far from the bay of clear water. My body, in these 20 years, was constantly nourished by the spiritual energy contained within the stone platform and gradually gained sentience. If it wasn't for the fact that she couldn't leave the stone platform, I would have already been devoured by her." Li Mu wrinkled his brows. The reason why Su He couldn't go too far away from the clear water bay should be because of this stone platform. He looked at Su He and asked, "Do you still remember the grooves on the stone platform?" Su He nodded. "I'll draw it for you." When Li Mu left the bay of clear water, it was already very late. He planned to ask Old Wang when he went to the yamen tomorrow. Perhaps he would know the mysteries of this altar. If he couldn't resolve internal matters, he would ask Li Si. If he couldn't resolve external matters, he would ask Old Wang. This was the experience that Li Mu had after getting familiar with them. When it came to matters of the heart, Li Si always had a unique view. And Old Wang was very knowledgeable. Whether it was the postpartum care of a sow, or the problems that one needed to pay attention to in the process of cultivation, he could talk tirelessly about them. Thinking about Su He's matter, Li Mu went to the yamen early the next morning to find Old Wang. Old Wang was in the middle of organizing the household register. Li Mu handed him a piece of paper with all kinds of crisscrossing talisman characters. He asked, "Old Wang, can you tell what this is?" Old Wang put down the household register and took the piece of paper. He looked it up and down, left and right. After a long time, he looked at Li Mu and asked, "Where did you get this?" "You don't have to worry about that." Li Mu stood by his side and said, "Can you tell what it is?" Old Wang placed the piece of paper on the table and said, "This is a formation, an extremely complex formation. 5 different formations are nested together to form a great formation with many functions. The person who came up with this formation is extremely brilliant." Li Mu quickly asked, "What is this formation used for?" Old Wang said, "It's used to raise corpses." He stood up and walked to his own room. He wandered around a row of bookshelves for a moment and took out a book. He opened it and flipped through a few pages. He pointed at a strange symbol and circled an area on the paper. He said, "Look, the function of this part of the formation is to raise corpses." Li Mu carefully compared it and found that the part that old Wang circled on the paper was very similar to the strange symbol on the book. There was a description of this symbol in the book. This talisman was a kind of formation pattern. Its main function was to prevent corpses from rotting. If it was carved on a coffin, the corpse could be preserved for a long time. Old Wang stroked his beard and explained, "This kind of formation is very common in some tribes with special funeral customs. The North County doesn't have such customs. The government also forbids people from raising corpses. If corpses don't rot for a long time, it's easy for them to turn into corpses. People who don't know Taoism and raise corpses privately are courting death." Li Mu finally understood why Su He's body was still like an 18 or 19-year-old girl even though she had been dead for 20 years. It was most likely because of this formation. He pointed at the other parts of the talisman on the paper and asked, "What about these?" Old Wang explained, "This is a combination formation. Each part of the formation pattern has a different function. The bottom left part of the formation pattern is used to raise corpses. However, if this formation pattern doesn't have spiritual energy, it won't last long. Therefore, the person who set up the formation added a spirit-gathering formation on top of this. It's used to gather spiritual energy and provide it to the corpse-raising formation to maintain its long-term operation." When Li Mu recalled the spiritual energy flowing on the altar, it was as if it had materialized. He was full of admiration for Lao Wang. He couldn't help but ask, "What about the two on the right?" "The one on the top right is a seal to prevent the raised corpse from escaping. As for the one on the bottom right..." Old Wang stroked his beard again and said, "If I'm not wrong, this formation should be set up at the bottom of the water." Li Mu was shocked, but his face didn't change. He asked, "Why?" Lao Wang said, he was probably worried that others would destroy this formation, so he set up an additional defensive formation. This formation needs to cut off a water vein. If you want to destroy this formation, you have to destroy this water vein or wait for the corpses in the formation to be strong enough to break out of the formation on their own. Li Mu was puzzled. This array formation had trapped Su He's physical body, so why would it affect her soul as well? He thought about it and asked, "What if the corpse's soul is still here? Then she definitely can't go too far from this formation." Lao Wang pointed at the piece of paper and said, "Do you see the rune in the middle? This rune has combined with the rune at the bottom left corner to form a very powerful seal. Although it's mainly used to trap corpses, the soul and the physical body are of the same origin. Similarly, it can't leave the formation too far, or it will directly dissipate." Old Wang's eyes were filled with admiration. He said, "The person who set up this formation is a genius. The 5 formation patterns complement each other. It's amazing, amazing." Li Mu wasn't interested in the person who set up the formation. This altar had existed before, and it was probably just a coincidence that Su He fell into it. Li Mu was thinking about how to save Su He. According to Old Wang, the formation had to be destroyed from the outside, or her body had to be destroyed from the inside. Only then could Su He be free. Destroying the formation from the outside meant destroying the water vein, which meant changing the direction of the river that flowed through Clearwater Bay. This was impossible. The county's water vein was the most important thing. Li Mu would probably be caught by his colleagues and brought back to the yamen before he could excavate it. He didn't know how long it would take for her body to be strong enough to destroy the formation. Chapter 88. Li Mu thought for a moment and remembered the little monk's identity. Before Li Mu's cultivation, there were 4 other cultivators in the Yangqiu County government, apart from Jianghu County magistrates and Constable Zhou. Among the 4, Li Qing, Han Zhe, and Wu Bo were Taoist disciples from the ancestral court of Fulu School. The last one was from the heart sect of the 4 Buddhist sects. Both Buddhism and Taoism cooperated with the imperial court. The 2 sects would send their young disciples to be stationed in local government offices. Firstly, it was for the disciples to gain experience. Secondly, it was to help the imperial court govern the local government. Although the cultivators considered themselves as outsiders, They had to show the necessary sincerity to the imperial court if they wanted to establish a sect in the Great Zhou and recruit believers. Wu Bo stood opposite the little monk, with snake corpses under his feet. Han Zhe was not exaggerating when he said that this person would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Ever since the fat man suffered a loss at the hands of the snake demon, he had been angry. These days, no less than hundreds of snakes had died at his hands. The little monk looked at the snake corpses on the ground and frowned. He said to Wu Bo, "Constable Wu, why did you kill so many creatures?" Wu Bo said disdainfully, "They were just a few unenlightened snakes. So what if I killed them? You don't care if others kill chickens or ducks. Why do you care about me?" Amitabha. The little monk chanted the name of Buddha and said with pity, "Chickens and ducks are domestic animals. When people kill chickens and ducks for food, they will accumulate evil karma. You killed the snakes for the evil in your heart. You will suffer the evil karma in the future." Wu Bo sneered and said, "How do you know that I didn't kill the snakes for food? Snake meat tastes good. I will eat snake soup today. Do you want to have a bowl?" The little monk was so angry that his face turned green. He chanted the name of Buddha a few times before he calmed down. He said slowly, "Constable Wu, the sea of bitterness is boundless. Repent and be saved." "I hope you won't continue to be wrong," Wu Bo said with disdain. "Sorry, I'm a cultivator. I don't believe in your boundless sea of bitterness." Constable Zhou came out from inside. Seeing the two of them at daggers drawn, he felt a headache and hurriedly said, "Don't quarrel, you two. The county magistrate has summoned you for something important. He's waiting for you. Come in quickly." Li Mu watched the commotion from the door of the guardhouse for a while before the two of them were called to the front office by Constable Zhou. This little monk also had a good temper. If it was Xuandu, Wu Bo would probably be kneeling on the ground and promising that he would never kill again. In Li Mu's memory, it was rare for the 4 cultivators of the yamen to gather together. He did not know what had happened that made the 4 cultivators gather in the county yamen. He walked back to the duty room and asked curiously, "Did something big happen in the yamen?" "I don't know." Zhang Shan shook his head and said, "Boss was summoned by the county magistrate just now. We'll know what happened when she comes out." Old Wang came in and said, "I heard some news. It said that the zombies in Zhou County were not under control and the zombie disaster spread to our county. Last night, several people in the villages adjacent to Zhou County were bitten." Hearing Old Wang's words, Li Mu was shocked and asked, "The zombie disaster spread to our county?" Just one jumping zombie was enough to give the yamen a headache. One could imagine what the consequences would be if zombies broke out in Yangqiu County. The zombie disaster in Zhou County had already killed hundreds and thousands of people. 3 months ago, the county magistrate came out in person and gathered countless masters, but he still could not control the situation. If Yangqiu County fell, the situation would probably be completely out of control. After all, zombies were different from ordinary monsters and ghosts. Without the intervention of the imperial court or cultivators, they could continuously turn ordinary people into their own kind. After a corpse was bitten by a jumping zombie, ordinary constables would no longer be able to subdue it. Flying zombies could create an unlimited number of jumping zombies. There was a record in the records of the monsters of the 10 prefectures that hundreds of years ago, the most serious zombie disaster was caused by a spirit corpse. This spiritual zombie directly turned a small country into a country of zombies. The flying stiff was just a general term. The strength of a zombie at this level was roughly equivalent to that of a cultivator in the middle 3 realms. The strength of a spiritual zombie was even above the flying stiff and was close to the upper 3 realms of cultivation. This type of zombie could be called a corpse cultivator. Their intelligence was not inferior to that of ordinary people. They knew spells and could use supernatural powers. Their bodies were made of copper and iron. Lightning could not penetrate them and magic treasures could not hurt them. They could compete with cultivators in the 7th realm. Back then, the spirit corpse had caused a huge commotion. In the end, the Spirit Array sect had to send out several elders to cover the entire small country with formations. Then, they had to send out countless high-level cultivators to quell the disaster. If the zombie disaster in North County was too big, The imperial court would probably use a similar method and give up on North County to solve the overall crisis. Our county is also plagued by zombies? When Zhang Shan heard this, his face turned pale. After the Zhang family village case, his fear of zombies still hadn't dissipated. Old Wang chuckled and said, "Don't worry. North County is where the ancestral court of F. Lu School is located. Now that things have gotten to this point, they won't ignore it. If F. Lu School is serious, let alone 1 or 2 flying stiff, even if a spiritual zombie comes, it won't be able to do anything." After a while, Li Qing walked in from outside. Seeing that everyone was there, she said, "There's an important matter that I need to inform you all of." She said with a serious expression, "The zombie disaster in Zhou County is spreading to Yangqiu County. The county magistrate ordered us to inform all the villages in the county and tell them not to go out at night. You also need to inform the people in your jurisdiction to be more vigilant." Li Mu's jurisdiction was in the county. If zombies appeared here, then the entire Yangqiu County would fall. Li Mu went door to door to inform the people on Weiyang Street. The threat of zombies was huge. After a day, a small number of shops along the street closed their doors. There were also fewer people on the street. The Yunyan Pavilion, which had a lot of customers, was also deserted. Lu Hanyan decided to close the shop. Under Li Mu's reminder, she stocked up on glutinous rice and stayed at home with Wanwan. They didn't leave the house and didn't take a step out. Although the possibility of zombies appearing in the county was very small, one of them had a pure Yin body and the other had natural spiritual eyes. They were the kind of people that zombies would be picky about. It was better to be prepared just in case. While eating, Lu Hanyan looked at Li Mu and asked, "When will those zombies be eliminated? The shop is losing money every day. It can't go on like this." Li Mu shook his head and said, "I don't know. Don't open the shop for now. I'll let you know when it's ready." Lu Hanyan glanced at him and said, "You're not the shopkeeper. Of course you're not in a hurry. If there are no customers for a month, who knows how many shops will close down? If the Yunyan Pavilion closes down, will you feed Wanwan and me?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "My monthly salary is only 500 coins. I can't afford it." Wanwan immediately looked at Li Mu and said, "I'm very easy to feed. I can only eat 1 bowl of rice every time. Miss is even easier to feed. She only eats a little bit every day." Lu Hanyan looked at Wanwan helplessly and said to Li Mu, "Fortunately, the haunted house was built long ago. Otherwise, I'm afraid it would delay your business." Li Mu smiled and said, "Don't worry. Those zombies won't be able to jump around for long." The ancestral court of the F. Lu School was in the North County. They didn't do anything before because they believed that the North County government could solve this matter. Now that the situation had spread, the government was having a hard time dealing with it. The F. Lu School would not stand by and do nothing. In the past 2 days, many students of the F. Lu School had gone down the mountain to participate in quelling the zombie disaster. This time, Li Mu had to take some risks. Fear was a rebellious emotion. It was difficult to refine and required a lot of courage. Li Mu originally planned to go to Zhou County to obtain the courage he needed from the zombies. After this disaster was quelled, he could directly condense his soul. Obtaining courage from zombies was different from extracting courage from monsters. Li Mu planned to go to Old Wang's place first to find a way to obtain courage from zombies. Chapter 89. Old Wang was in the duty room. He took out a book from the bookshelf and threw it to Li Mu, asking, "How many spirits have you refined?" Li Mu memorized the formula for extracting zombie spirit and said, "I've reached the 4th spirit." Old Wang shook his head and said, "With the cultivation of the 4th spirit, you can deal with white and black zombies, but it's too difficult to deal with jumping zombies. You should be careful. It's best to let Miss Qing help you extract the spirit. She just came to ask me how to extract zombie spirit." Li Mu was stunned for a moment and asked, "Boss came here?" Old Wang clicked his tongue and said, "Miss Qing is really good to you. She doesn't necessarily only treat you as a subordinate. Young man, you have to seize the opportunity." Someone cared more about him than he did. This made Li Mu's heart surge with warmth. Li Mu came to the duty room. Li Qing was reading the records of monsters in the 10 continents. She turned to the page about the habits of zombies. Seeing Li Mu come in, she raised her head and said, "I've checked. There will be a large amount of spirit left in zombies. In 2 days we will go to Zhou County. I will help you extract some then. This way, you can condense the 4th spirit as soon as possible." Li Mu walked forward and suddenly asked, "Boss, why are you so good to me?" Li Qing was stunned for a moment, then said indifferently, "You are my subordinate. I naturally have to be responsible for your life." Li Mu asked, "Just because of this?" Li Qing looked at him and asked, "Otherwise?" If it were someone else, Li Mu might think that they coveted his pure yang body and wanted to dual cultivate with him, but Li Qing had always said what she wanted. This zombie incident was completely different from the last time in Jianghu village. There were countless jumping zombies and even flying stiff. Even if a transcendent realm cultivator was involved, they would not be able to escape unscathed. Li Qing was only at the spirit condensation realm. She had to take a great risk to help him collect spirit. Li Mu couldn't watch her take risks for him with a clear conscience. He thought for a moment and said, "Boss, come with me. I have something important to tell you." Li Qing asked, "Can't we talk about it in the guardhouse?" Li Mu shook his head. "This is not the place to talk." He turned around and walked out of the room. Li Qing thought for a moment, put down the book in her hand, and followed him out. After walking out of the duty room, Li Mu walked straight out of the county government office. Li Qing looked a little confused, but she still followed Li Mu. Wu Bo stood at the door of the other room and looked at the backs of the 2 men as they left. A trace of gloominess flashed across his chubby face. Li Mu walked out of the county government and then out of the county. Using the light body technique, he came to a deserted forest. Li Qing landed beside him, and the expression on her face became serious. She asked, "What happened? Do you need to talk about it here?" Li Mu looked back at her. His hands formed the 6-ding jade maiden seal, and his mouth whispered, "Lin." A white thunderbolt appeared out of thin air and fell on a huge tree in front of them. The huge tree was directly split into pieces. Thunder and fire swirled in the air, and the debris splashed in all directions. Thunder method. Li Qing's pretty face showed an incredulous expression. The next moment, she seemed to realize something and said in shock, "No, this is Taoist magic." Li Mu's life principle was to take revenge and repay kindness. The kindness of saving his life, the kindness of teaching him, the kindness of giving him treasures, and the kindness of taking care of Li Mu in daily life. None of these could be repaid with a tranquil heart technique. If Li Qing was willing, even if Li Mu wanted to repay her with his pure yang body, it was not impossible for him to consider it. Actually, Li Mu had long wanted to impart this thunder method to Li Qing. However, he had never thought of a good reason. He could not always say that he obtained it by accident. Otherwise, everyone would be suspicious. This time, he had to quell the zombie disaster and collect courage for himself. It was abnormally dangerous and his life could be in danger at any moment. Li Mu did not have the luxury of time to think. He looked at Li Qing, who was rooted to the spot, and said, "Boss, the 6-ding jade maiden seal and the true word, Lin, is this thunder method Dao technique. You have to familiarize yourself with it as soon as possible. Even if you meet with the flying stiff, you'll be able to counter it." With his soul-refining realm cultivation, Li Mu could use this true word to instantly kill 3rd realm demon cultivators and ghosts. Although the 4th realm was already fundamentally different from the 3rd realm, Li Qing's dermic powers were much thicker than Li Mu's. With the help of this Dao technique, it was not difficult for her to kill enemies 1 level above her. Although the flying stiff was neither a demon nor a ghost, it was still an evil being and was countered by thunder method. If Li Qing encountered it, even if she could not kill it, she could still protect herself. Li Qing looked into Li Mu's eyes and finally understood why he had brought her here. The power of thunder method was immense. Among all the dermic methods, it was also one of the best. Thunder method Dao techniques were extremely rare. The rarity of a thunder method Dao technique that only had 1 true word was evident. For Dao techniques and abhijnas, the shorter the true word the better. The shorter the true word, the faster the dermic method technique could be cast. This played a crucial role in battle. Li Mu looked at her and said, "Boss, you try it first." Li Qing did not say anything else. She shifted her gaze and formed the 6-ding jade maiden seal with her hands. She said silently, "Lin." Another bolt of lightning appeared in front of them, blasting a charred hole in the ground. Unlike Li Mu's white lightning, the lightning that Li Qing released was purple. When he was possessed by Su He the previous 2 times, Li Mu also summoned purple lightning. Without a doubt, the power of the purple lightning was greater than that of the white lightning. Li Qing chanted the Lin word silently again. Dozens of white lightning bolts appeared in the sky, raising a small hill with a radius of around 10 feet to the ground. It was very obvious that the purple lightning was more powerful and consumed more dermic powers. Compared to the purple lightning, the white lightning required less dermic powers and could cause an area of effect attack. Li Qing took a deep breath and said, "I will practice this Dao technique more." Li Mu had already thought of an excuse, but he did not expect that Li Qing did not even ask him. He was stunned for a moment. Looking at Li Qing, he asked, "Boss, why don't you ask me where this Dao technique came from?" Li Qing said calmly, "Everyone has their own secrets. You have your own opportunities and secrets. Why do I need to get to the bottom of everything?" Her temperament was indeed indifferent. Lu Hanyan was different. Her curiosity was heavier than a cat's. She wanted to get to the bottom of everything. Whenever Li Mu returned late, she would beat around the bush to find out where Li Mu went. In other words, this was also a display of Li Qing's trust in him. Li Qing did not ask him, and Li Mu did not need to explain. The 2 of them looked at each other and did not say anything. When they returned to the county, it was already noon. Li Mu knew that Li Qing usually ate alone. She liked to eat noodles and often visited a roadside noodle stall. The noodle stall was opened by a widowed woman. Li Mu and Zhang Shan had eaten there a few times. The taste was really good. "Boss, do you want to eat at my house?" There was Wan at home. Li Mu had to go home to cook. When the 2 of them were about to leave, he asked politely. Li Qing stopped in her tracks. After thinking for a moment, she nodded and said, "Okay." Li Mu was slightly stunned. He did not expect her to really agree. She had always been a loner. Han Zhe and Wu Bo had invited her to eat with them many times, but she had directly rejected them. Li Mu was also stunned for a moment. He nodded and said, "Boss, what do you want to eat? I'll make it for you." Li Qing, "Whatever." When other women said, "whatever," there might be countless interpretations. If Li Qing said, "whatever," then it was really, whatever. Li Mu thought for a moment. Considering Li Qing's preferences, he still made his best Yangchun noodles. Wan also liked to eat it very much. She could eat at least 3 bowls every time. If she ate more than usual, 5 bowls would not be a problem. At a noodle stall on Weiyang Street, Zhang Shan slurped a mouthful of noodles and almost scalded his mouth. He quickly took a few breaths and inadvertently looked at the street in front of him. He said, "Isn't that the boss?" "Li Mu is also here." Li Si slowly ate his noodles. When he raised his head and saw Li Qing walk into Li Mu's house, his hand movements also paused. Zhang Shan put down his chopsticks and said in surprise, "The boss and Li Mu went home. Why did they even close the door?" Li Si glanced at him and said, "Don't make a fuss. Eat your food." Somewhere on the street, a very fat figure sat by the window on the 2nd floor of a restaurant. He looked at the 2 figures walking on the street below. His eyes flashed, and no one knew what he was thinking. After returning home, Li Mu took Li Qing to the study and said, "Boss, take a seat first. I'll go and cook." After Li Mu left, Li Qing did not sit down. She stopped in front of a row of bookshelves. There were not many books on this bookshelf. Most of them were basic books on Taoism cultivation, as well as some miscellaneous books, such as Records of Supernatural Beings and Records of Monsters in the 10 Continents. There was a stack of papers on the desk, and the words, "Strange Stories from a Chinese Studio," were at the top of the page. This Strange Stories from a Chinese Studio had been popular in Yangqiu County for a month. Li Qing had heard of it, but she did not read these books usually. She only knew that this book was selling well in the bookstore, but she did not know the specific content. This was obviously a manuscript that had not been published yet. Li Qing walked to the table and saw a lot of such manuscripts stacked at the corner of the table. In addition, she also saw a golden hairpin on the table. This golden hairpin was extremely exquisite. The hairpin head was a lifelike phoenix. Obviously, it was a woman's item. Footsteps came from outside the study, followed by a woman's pleasant voice. Have you finished the 5th volume of Strange Stories from a Chinese Studio? I seem to have left the hairpin here yesterday. Help me find it. Chapter 90. Lu Hanyan stepped into the study but did not see Li Mu. Instead, she saw an unfamiliar woman. The woman's appearance was outstanding. She was tall and wore an official uniform similar to Li Mu's. She had a trace of masculinity. Lu Hanyan's eyes lit up at first sight. She was stunned for a moment, then asked, "You're here to see Li Mu?" Li Qing could tell at a glance that the woman in front of her was also a cultivator, but her cultivation was not high. She seemed to have only refined 2 souls. She looked at Lu Hanyan and nodded. "I'm Li Mu's colleague." Under his gaze, Lu Hanyan felt as if she had been seen through. She panicked for no reason and said, "I'm his neighbor? Is he not at home?" When Wanwan ran into the kitchen, Li Mu knew that Lu Hanyan should be here as well. He walked out of the kitchen and saw that she was not in the courtyard. When he walked to the door of the study, he saw her. When Lu Hanyan went to the county yamen for the case of the Yunyan Pavilion, Li Qing was not there. This was the first time the two met. Li Mu walked into the study and introduced her to Lu Hanyan. "This is Constable Li Qing, my superior." Then he said to Li Qing, "This is Lady Lu Hanyan, my neighbor." "Greetings, Constable Li." "Greetings, Lady Lu." After introducing them to each other, Li Mu returned to the kitchen. Wanwan helped Li Mu in the kitchen. Lu Hanyan and Li Qing walked into the courtyard. Li Qing had a cold personality. When she was with people she was familiar with, she rarely spoke. Although Lu Hanyan was smooth and slick, she did not know what to say at this moment. After a while, Wanwan ran out of the kitchen. When she saw Li Qing standing in the courtyard, she said in surprise, "Hey, Constable sister, are you also eating at our house today?" Lu Hanyan quickly explained, "Don't listen to her nonsense. She's been freeloading here all day. She already thinks of this place as her own home." Li Qing smiled faintly and did not say anything. She looked at Lu Hanyan and said, "Lady Lu is also a cultivator." "I'm not a cultivator." Lu Hanyan smiled and said, "I just learned a few things from Li Mu." Li Qing smiled and said, "Lady Lu's talent for cultivation is very good. She was able to condense her soul in such a short time. Her future achievements are limitless." Lu Hanyan still remembered Li Mu's warning not to mention her pure in body and talent for cultivation to anyone. She did not continue this topic. She looked at Li Qing again and praised, "Constable Li is so beautiful and so powerful in cultivation. I'm so envious." Lady Lu is also very beautiful. When Li Mu came out with 2 bowls of noodles, he heard Lu Hanyan and Li Qing flattering each other. Before the meal, they seemed to be chatting well. But during the meal, they did not say anything. The atmosphere was a bit cold. One was a constable of the county government and the other was a shopkeeper. They did not have much in common. Li Mu wanted to liven up the atmosphere, but he did not know what to say. After thinking, he asked Li Qing, "Boss, are the cultivators from the county government going to Zhou County this time?" Li Qing nodded and said, "The county governor has ordered all the cultivators from the 13 counties in the North County to come to Zhou County within 3 days and help Zhou County quell the chaos this time." Li Mu thought for a moment and asked, "Should I go?" Li Qing said, "You haven't condensed your soul yet. You can stay in the county government." Usually, when the 3 of them ate together, it was very lively. Today, there was one more person, so it was a bit cold. Li Qing left after the meal. When there were outsiders, Wanwan was embarrassed to eat too much. She only ate 2 bowls. Now, she was eating her 3rd bowl. Lu Hanyan helped Li Mu clean up the dishes and asked, "What's Constable Li's realm?" Li Mu said, "The 3rd realm, spirit condensation." Lu Hanyan had just refined the 2nd soul. Hearing this, she said in surprise, "So high." Li Mu nodded and said, "They have been cultivating since they were young. We have only cultivated for a few days. Of course, we can't compare. In terms of talent, Li Mu and Lu Hanyan were better than Li Qing. However, Li Qing had been cultivating in Fulu school since she was a child. After more than 10 years of hard work, Li Mu and Lu Hanyan, who had just started cultivating, could not catch up with her. Lu Hanyan said with envy, "God really favors Constable Li. She is so beautiful and her cultivation realm is so high. When can I be as powerful as her?" Li Mu glanced at her and said, "Others can say this, but what right do you have to say it? If one were to say that the heavens would take care of some people, then he would definitely take care of Lu Hanyan much more than Li Qing." Not only was she outstanding in appearance, her figure was impressive, her cultivation talent was high, and she had a 1 in a million pure yin body. She was also so rich. Thinking about it, even Li Mu began to envy her. Lu Hanyan understood the meaning behind Li Mu's words. She was a little proud and said, "Constable Li seems to be very good to you. This is the first time you have brought someone back for dinner." Li Mu nodded and said, "In this world, she is the person who treats me the best." Li Mu was alone in his previous life. After coming here, he was still alone. Because very few people were good to him, Li Mu kept in mind all the good things that others did to him. Li Qing introduced him to cultivation, gave him bai, and helped him draw talismans. In front of her, Li Mu almost fulfilled all of her requests. Lu Hanyan was not related to him. Just because they were neighbors, she stayed up for 3 days in a row to help him change the script of transforming into butterflies. In order to help Li Mu collect fear, she gave up the planned branch of the Yunyan Pavilion. She loved money the most, but she would rather give up the profits of the bookstore to help him prepare a haunted house. Li Mu remembered all of these. He put down the bowl and said, "The courage in the zombies is helpful for soul condensation. I will go to Zhou County this time to help you collect some. With your talent, you will soon reach the soul condensation realm. You don't have to envy anyone." After careful consideration, Li Mu still decided to go to Zhou County in person. Firstly, he was worried about Li Qing. Secondly, Li Mu also wanted to train himself through actual combat. A cultivator who only knew how to guide cultivation was no different from a flower in a greenhouse. When it came to fighting with people, it was just a show. Although Zhou County was dangerous, it was also a rare opportunity to train. To deal with evil creatures like zombies, Li Mu might not be able to beat them, but he could definitely run away from them. The last reason was that Li Mu also wanted to collect some courage for Lu Hanyan and Wanwan. In terms of cultivation, besides Li Qing, he could also ask Old Wang for advice. Lu Hanyan and Wanwan only had Li Mu behind them. Shopkeeper Lu was so nice to her, and Wanwan was so obedient. Apart from cultivation, Li Mu did not have many opportunities to repay her. Lu Hanyan, who was beside him, did not respond. When Li Mu turned around, he realized that she had already left. 1 yard away, in Lu Hanyan's room, she snorted and said angrily, "Wanwan, do you think I am good to him?" Wanwan raised her head and asked in confusion, "Who?" Lu Hanyan said, "Who else? Of course, it's the young master you keep talking about every day." Wanwan said, "Miss, you are very good to the young master. You have never been so good to anyone before." Lu Hanyan turned her head and snorted, "Humph, I'm not as good to him as Constable Li." Wanwan pulled her sleeve and whispered, "Miss, don't be angry, I'm not angry." Lu Hanyan waved her hand and said, "Why would I be angry because of a man? Men are all pig trotters, pig trotters." Wanwan's throat moved. She murmured, "Miss, let the young master stew pig trotters for us tonight." Lu Hanyan reached out and tapped her forehead. She said angrily, "Eat, eat. You only know how to eat. You don't even know when your husband will be taken away." Wanwan was shocked. She said nervously, "Who wants to take the young master away? You haven't married yet?" Lu Hanyan rubbed her head and sighed helplessly. She said, "It's over. You are so stupid. Who can you beat? Even if you get married, you will be bullied." Wanwan lowered her head and said embarrassedly, "Miss, you are smart. I will follow you," Lu Hanyan said. "You are following me now. Can you follow me for a lifetime?" Wanwan said, "Yes. How can you follow me after you get married?" I can still follow you after I get married? Lu Hanyan was stunned for a moment. Chapter 91. After dinner, Li Mu returned to the county yamen and told Li Qing his idea. Li Qing said in surprise, "You want to go to Zhou County?" Li Mu nodded and said, "I've already condensed the 3 spirits and can deal with ordinary zombies. Even if I can't beat them, I can protect myself. I can take advantage of this opportunity to train myself." Li Qing thought of Li Mu's Thunder Taoist magic and the Buddha's light that could restrain evil beings. After pondering for a moment, she nodded and said, "That's good too. When the time comes, you can just stay by my side." She looked at Li Mu and suddenly asked, "The book, Strange Stories from a Strange Story, is very popular on the market. Did you write it?" Li Mu said embarrassedly, "The salary is too little. It's all for living. I don't think I violated the Yamen's rules, right?" Li Qing shook her head and said, "But there's something I hope you can tell me truthfully." Li Mu thought of Su He and Lu Hanyan's questions after reading Strange Stories from a Strange Story, and hurriedly explained, "Boss, please don't misunderstand. I'm not interested in those female ghosts, female demons, or female foxes. I just want to say that all things have spirits. Whether it's human or demon, they all have the right to pursue love." Li Qing shook her head and said, "That's not what I want to ask." Li Mu was puzzled and asked, "Then what is it?" Li Qing looked at him and asked, "Lady Lu, you also know the Qingxin formula, right?" If he had known that Li Qing and Lu Hanyan would meet one day and that she could tell at a glance whether Lu Hanyan knew the Qingxin formula or not, Li Mu would not have lied at that time. It was better to tell her at that time than to be directly exposed by her now. Li Mu opened his mouth and finally nodded and said, "I know." However, he immediately added, "But don't worry, boss. She definitely won't tell anyone. I didn't mean to lie to you last time." Li Qing didn't care. She shook her head and said, "This is yours. You can give it to whoever you want. You don't need to explain to me." Li Mu heaved a sigh of relief. "It's good that you're not angry?" Li Qing glanced at him. "Why should I be angry?" Regarding this matter, Li Qing did not seem to blame him. After saying this, she went out to patrol. Li Mu turned around and saw 3 heads sticking out of the window of Old Wang's duty room. Old Wang looked at him and shook his head. "See?" Li Si looked at him strangely, as if he was looking at an idiot. Zhang Shan looked confused. Obviously, he didn't know what had happened. Li Mu looked around and made sure that they were looking at him. He walked into Old Wang's duty room and asked, "Why are you looking at me?" Li Si said lightly, "When a woman says she's angry, she usually isn't angry. And when a woman says she's not angry, she must be angry." Old Wang clapped his hands and praised, "Brilliant." Li Mu looked at him and asked, "You're saying that boss is angry?" It was easy to tell if Lu Hanyan was angry. Her emotions were written on her face. When she was angry, it was like Li Mu owed her tens of thousands of taels of silver. Li Qing's emotions never showed. Li Mu found it difficult to judge her mood based on her expression and tone. Li Si knew more about this than Li Mu. If he said that Li Qing was angry, she was probably really angry. However, was she angry that Li Mu told Lu Hanyan the Qingxin secret art, or was she angry that he didn't tell her that he taught Lu Hanyan the Qingxin secret art? He really couldn't understand a woman's thoughts. Li Si patted him on the shoulder and said, "It's useless for me to tell you. You can slowly understand this kind of thing." Zhang Shan didn't know what had happened, but he heard that Li Mu was going to Zhou County. He said, "I heard that you're going to Zhou County. How long have you been cultivating? Why are you showing off? Is that a place you can go?" Li Mu said, "Don't worry. With boss there won't be any danger." Old Wang said leisurely, "There are unexpected changes in the sky, and people are unpredictable. Li Mu, don't let anything happen to you. I'm still waiting for you to send me off. Don't let me send you off, bah." Zhang Shan spat fiercely and said, "Old man, can't you say something nice?" After that, he realized something. He looked at Old Wang and said angrily, "We'll send you off? Damn Old Wang. I treat you as a friend, but you treat us as your sons?" He pretended to strangle Old Wang's neck. Old Wang coughed twice and said, Be careful. If you strangle me to death, you'll have to buy me a coffin with your hidden money. In your dreams. Zhang Shan let go of his hand and glanced at him. He said, "At most, I'll roll up 2 straw mats. I'll dig a hole for you in the mass grave and fill it with some soil." Old Wang shook his head in disappointment and said, "If you say so, all the money I've saved over the years will be given to Li Mu and Li Si." "You've saved money?" When Zhang Shan heard this, he immediately went up and said, "Do you like pine or fir wood for the coffin? Leave it to me. I promise that after you die, I'll arrange it properly for you." Old Wang thought for a moment and said, "Phoebe Zhenin, if you really can't, sandalwood is also fine." Zhang Shan scolded angrily, "Bullsh*t, I can't afford that kind of wood even if I sell myself." "You'd better dream. You have everything in your dreams." Li Mu walked out of Old Wang's room and saw Wu Bo carrying a huge snake corpse in from outside. The little monk Huiyuan followed behind him and said angrily, "Constable Wu, this snake has already developed intelligence and is 1 step away from forming a fetus. It hasn't done anything to harm people. Why did you kill it for no reason?" Wu Bo sneered and said, "How do you know that it hasn't harmed anyone? Snakes don't eat grass. This snake has grown to such a large size, and who knows how many creatures have lost their lives in its mouth. Killing it is also an act of justice on behalf of the heavens." The little monk said angrily, "You're twisting words and forcing logic." Wu Bo mocked, "Am I wrong?" "Amit Ba." Huiyuan took a deep breath and said, "The heavens are watching what people do. Those who are unjust are doomed to destruction. Constable Wu, you're on your own." Zhang Shan looked over and whispered, "This guy surnamed Wu even dares to bully a monk. He'll suffer retribution sooner or later." "There's no such thing as retribution in this world." Old Wang sat in the room and shook his head. "Only good people have short lives and evil people live for 1,000 years. Those who kill and burn eat and drink well, and those who build bridges and pave roads don't even have skeletons left." Zhang Shan shook his head and said, "Wu Bo ate so many snakes. Maybe one day he'll be eaten by a more powerful snake demon." Old Wang opened a book and said with a smile, "Look at what's written in the book. There's no such thing as a demon eating a human. It's all about humans eating humans. If you don't want to be eaten, you can only eat others." Since the last meal, Li Mu hadn't seen Lu Hanyan for 2 days. Only Wan Wan came twice. However, she was usually busy. She had to arrange music and rehearse. It wasn't uncommon for her to rest in the shop for several days in a row. Li Mu was about to leave for Zhou County in a while, so he didn't have time to say goodbye to her. He wrote a note and stuffed it through the crack in the door. When he returned home, he took the teleport talisman and evil punishment talisman with him and packed some clothes. When he walked out of the door, the courtyard next door was still closed. Li Mu shook his head and turned to leave. Not long after, a bouncing figure ran from afar. Wan Wan came to Li Mu's door with 2 pig trotters in her hand. She was about to knock on the door when she saw that it was locked. She turned around and said, "Miss, the young master isn't here. If he's not here, then he's not here." "As if I want to see him." Lu Hanyan pursed her lips and opened the courtyard door. Just as she was about to step in, her eyes inadvertently glanced. She suddenly bent down and picked up a piece of paper from the ground. There were only 2 short lines on the paper. "I'm going to Zhou County. You and Wan Wan should be careful at home. Close the doors and windows at night. Remember to bring Fulu with you." Lu Hanyan's expression changed. She asked, "Aren't there a lot of zombies in Zhou County? Why is he going there?" Wan Wan raised her head and said, "Yesterday, the young master said that there's something in the zombies' bodies that can help us cultivate. Who wants his help?" Lu Hanyan's face turned pale. She clenched the paper tightly and gritted her teeth. "That idiot." Chapter 92. In the front hall of the county government. Li Mu, Li Qing, Han Zhe, Wu Bo, and the little monk named Huiyuan were standing in the yard. Constable Zhou looked at them and said, "This trip to Zhou County will be very dangerous. You must pay attention to your safety. No matter what happens, self-protection is the most important thing." Li Qing did not stop Li Mu from going to Zhou County with them. Although this matter was dangerous, it was also an opportunity to train himself. Although she seemed to be really angry last time, she never mentioned it again after that. This was the biggest difference between Li Qing and Lu Hanyan. She would never act like a little girl and was not as narrow-minded as Lu Hanyan. Constable Zhou warned them and then looked at Li Mu, saying, "Li Mu, your cultivation is the lowest. You must stay with the constables at all times. You can't go too far." Li Mu nodded and said, "Thank you, Constable Zhou. I know." Constable Zhou glanced at them again and said, "Constable Wu's cultivation is the highest. I hope you can listen to Constable Wu's arrangements on this trip. I will wait for your victory at the government office." Zhou County was a neighboring county to Yangqiu County. It only took half a day for cultivators like Li Mu to travel from the county town of Yangqiu County to the place where the two counties met. After leaving the county town, Li Mu and the other three used the magic traveling talisman to travel. The little monk Huiyuan could follow them stably with just his 2 legs. Li Mu walked beside Huiyuan and asked curiously, "Little Master Huiyuan, what kind of magic is that?" Huiyuan smiled and explained, "This is called the shadow-following leg. It's pretty good to use it to hurry on the road." In this world, the cultivators of Taoism liked to use talismans and formations to make up for the flaws in their Dharma powers. The Buddhists mainly cultivated Dharma powers and had countless kinds of Dharma powers. Li Mu had always wanted to learn, but unfortunately, he didn't have the chance. Huiyuan looked at Li Mu and suddenly asked, "Benefactor Li gives me a very close feeling. Do you also cultivate Buddhist mana?" Li Mu nodded and said, "Master Xuandu once gave me a Dharma Sutra." "So it's Uncle Xuandu." Huiyuan smiled and said, "Benefactor Li must have a deep Buddhist affinity to be favored by Uncle Xuandu." Li Mu said modestly, "You're too kind. I just read it casually when I have nothing to do." Traveling was boring and Li Qing did not like to chat. Li Mu, Wu Bo and Hanja had nothing to talk about. After getting closer to Huiyuan, they quickly started chatting. Although Li Mu had been chanting the Heart Sutra to cultivate, he did not have a deep understanding of Buddhist cultivation. Old Wang's bookshelf was filled with Taoist books. None of them were about Buddhism. In the conversation with Huiyuan, Li Mu found out a lot of information that he did not know before. For example, the first 3 realms of Buddhist cultivation were enlightenment, clairvoyance, and karma. The corresponding realms of Taoism were soul refining, soul concentrating, and spirit concentrating. In the lower 3 realms of cultivation, Taoism refined the 7 souls and Buddhism cultivated the 6 roots. They were actually somewhat similar. Huiyuan's current realm was the 2nd realm, clairvoyance. Li Mu could barely be considered to have just entered the enlightenment realm. Other than revealing a few Buddhist auras, he did not know any other Buddhist superpowers. The two of them chatted along the way. Before the sun set, they finally arrived at Zhou County. There was a small village adjacent to Zhou County and Yangqiu County. Many people gathered there. Most of these people were people in ragged clothes and looked haggard. There was also a portion of them who were cultivators. Their cultivation was not very high. Most of the people in the small village were injured. From the wounds on their bodies, it was obvious that they had been poisoned. Li Mu saw a cultivator grab a handful of glutinous rice from the cloth bag he carried with him and apply it to the wound on his arm. Black smoke immediately rose from the wound. The cultivator clenched his teeth and his expression was ferocious. He fainted from the pain. Amitabha. Huiyuan looked away and could not help but recite the name of Buddha. As soon as they entered the village, they were welcomed in by an old official. As the old official walked, he asked, "Are you colleagues from Yangqiu County?" Hanja nodded and asked, "How's the situation in Zhou County?" "Much better." A smile appeared on the old man's face as he said, "Reinforcements from the various counties have arrived. Many immortal masters from the Talisman sect also came down and killed a flying zombie. The few towns in front are no longer in danger. Those who are here now are those who were injured earlier." From the old official's words, Li Mu and the others understood the general situation in Zhou County. A few days ago, the zombie disaster in Zhou County was on the verge of going out of control and spreading to the surrounding counties. The county governor had no choice but to gather the forces of the entire North County to suppress the zombies in Zhou County. He also asked for help from Fulu School. In just a few days, the situation was under control. There were countless experts in Fulu School. As soon as they arrived in Zhou County, they killed a flying stiff. If it were not for the birth of a few more flying stiff in the zombie horde in the past 3 months, the zombie disaster this time would have been mostly resolved. However, with this unprecedented power, it was only a matter of time before this disaster was resolved. Li Mu and the others were at the back of the county. Some injured cultivators and commoners were settled here. Further ahead were the villages that were most seriously affected by the disaster. The commoners gathered in villages. Those who lived outside were also asked to move to the nearest village. The zombies that wreaked havoc in Zhou County were not naturally formed white zombies and black zombies. After being bitten by flying zombies and jumping zombies, the people who turned into zombies were more dangerous than white zombies and black zombies. They hid in dark places during the day and came out to cause harm at night. Zhou County's geology was strange. There were many underground karst caves. In the past, they were rare sights. This time, they became the hiding places of the zombies. Daytime was the best time to exterminate these zombies. However, the underground karst caves were very complicated. Even if the cultivators found the entrance, they would not dare to go deep. They could only wait for the zombies to come out at night. The old official took them to a yard and said, "It's dangerous at night. I'll have to trouble you to rest here for the night. If you want to continue, you'd better wait until tomorrow morning." When zombies moved in groups at night, even cultivators in the realm of assembled spirit would find it difficult to resist. The cultivators in Zhou County usually moved in groups. The yard was very shabby. There were only 3 rooms. Li Qing was the only woman, so she naturally took one room. Wu Bo and Han Zhi stayed in one room, while Li Mu and the little monk Huiyuan stayed in the other room. Li Mu and Li Mu's room only had a wooden bed. After he put down the luggage, he found that Huiyuan was not in the room. Li Mu went outside and saw Huiyuan squatting beside an injured commoner. His hands were glowing with Buddha's light, which was slowly flowing into the man's wound. As the golden Buddha's light flowed into the man's wound, wisps of black qi came out. That was the corpse qi in his body. If the corpse qi was not removed, it would spread throughout the body and eventually make them lose their intelligence, turning them into zombies. This was also the trouble of zombies. As long as someone was scratched or bitten by them, even if they did not die at the time, they would eventually become one of them if the corpse poison was not removed in time. Although glutinous rice was effective in removing the corpse poison, the process was too painful. On the other hand, Buddha's manna had a miraculous effect on healing and removing poison. Li Mu walked to Huiyuan's side and squatted down. He stretched out his hand and a golden Buddha's light appeared in his palm. He channeled the Buddha's light into the other person's body. After a wisp of black qi came out of the man's chest, his face immediately became ruddy. Huiyuan looked at the golden Buddha's light in Li Mu's palm and smiled. Benefactor Li is indeed born with wisdom. You've only cultivated for a few months and you already have such abilities. If you can convert to Buddhism, there will definitely be an eminent monk in the future. Li Mu waved his hand. Let's talk about this in the future. Whether it was the old monk or the young monk, they all wanted him to become a monk. However, Li Mu was a layman. Although cultivating Taoism and Buddhism were all cultivation, after becoming a monk, he could not marry a wife. The Buddha could not help him solve his personal problems. Cultivating Taoism did not exist. He could marry as many wives as he wanted. It was much more tempting than being a monk. Taking a step back, cultivating Buddhist abhijna did not necessarily require one to become a monk. Wasn't it good to be like this? Li Mu called the old official over and called out the people and cultivators who were injured by the zombies. Together with Huiyuan, they helped them remove the corpse poison. After the corpse poison was removed, their bodies immediately felt much better. Everyone thanked them profusely. "Thank you, little master." "Thank you, master." Because he could use the light of Buddha, Li Mu was also mistaken for a monk who cultivated with hair. After he explained a few times, he was too lazy to explain. Li Mu saved another person. When he turned around, he saw the little monk Huiyuan looking at him in a daze. Li Mu touched his face and asked, "Is there something on my face?" Huiyuan shook his head. Then why are you looking at me?" Huiyuan touched his bald head and asked, "Benefactor Li, don't you want merit?" "Merit?" Li Mu was stunned for a moment and asked, "What merit?" Chapter 93. Huiyuan put his palms together and said, "It is said in the Buddhist scriptures that one can break through life and death, achieve nirvana, and save all living beings. It is called merit. This merit is the virtue of doing good deeds, so it is called merit." Li Mu looked at him and said, "Can you say something that normal people can understand?" Huiyuan scratched his head and said, "Doing good deeds such as giving alms, repairing temples, creating statues, setting people free, and saving people from suffering can get merit. Merit is helpful for our cultivation. Doesn't Benefactor Li know?" Li Mu's understanding of Buddhist cultivation was very limited. At that time, Xuandu just threw him a Buddhist scripture. No one had ever told Li Mu about merit. After listening to Huiyuan's explanation, Li Mu understood. In layman's terms, merit was a kind of power obtained from the person doing good deeds. Li Mu seemed to be guiding other people's emotions in the same way. But it was obvious that merit and the 7 emotions were not the same thing. Li Mu could see the 7 emotions, but he could not see merit. Li Mu quickly thought of another point. If merit came from the person doing good deeds, then Li Mu could understand that giving alms, setting people free, and saving people from suffering could get merit. But where did the merit of repairing temples and creating statues come from? He vaguely felt that the matter of merit should not be so simple. Now was not the time to trace the origin. Li Mu was thinking about another thing. He looked at Huiyuan again and asked, "How can merit help us cultivate?" Seeing that Li Mu really did not understand, Huiyuan explained, "Benefactor Li, close your eyes and feel your surroundings with your heart." Li Mu did not know what to do, so he simply silently recited the mind-clearing formula and purely used his spiritual sense to feel. After calming himself down, he indeed felt that there was something around him. That thing was very weak. If he did not calm down to feel, he would not have found it at all. But when Li Mu opened his eyes, he couldn't sense anything. Even if he used Heaven's Eye, he couldn't see anything unusual. This showed that merit and the 7 emotions were 2 completely different things. He closed his eyes again and soon felt the faint presence of that thing again. Huiyuan continued, "Try to absorb these merits into your body." Li Mu immediately used the Daoyin technique and absorbed all the floating things into his body. At the same time, Li Mu also clearly felt that the Buddhist magic in his body was circulating faster. He finally understood why Xuandu had said, "Helping others is helping myself," and why he liked to help others so much. Buddhist cultivators could directly use merit to cultivate. Perhaps back then, Li Mu had been used as a leek to harvest merit. Thinking about it carefully, he didn't feel any discomfort at that time. He didn't know what the cause of this merit was. What exactly was merit? Li Mu couldn't figure it out himself. He planned to go back and ask Old Wang. "So there are such benefits to doing good deeds," Li Mu murmured. In that case, when he helped old ladies cross the road, sent lost women home, and collected joy, he could also gain merit. It was just that he didn't know at that time and wasted the opportunity. Huiyuan shook his head and said, "We do good deeds, not for merit. Benefactor Li, don't reverse cause and effect." Li Mu smiled and said, it's the same, whether it was doing good deeds for merit or gaining merit while doing good deeds, the process was the same. In order to cultivate, Li Mu decided to do good deeds every day in the future. This way, his Buddhist magic would quickly catch up. Under the efforts of Li Mu and Huiyuan, the corpse poison in the bodies of all the wounded gathered in the small village was completely removed. Even though each removal of corpse poison didn't require much magic power, but after helping dozens of people, Li Mu was still unbearably tired. After returning to his room, he sat on the bed and meditated. Huiyuan found a praying mat from who knows where. He sat cross-legged on the praying mat and wiped his staff until it was as shiny as his head. After wiping the staff, he sat cross-legged and closed his eyes. The curtain of night gradually enveloped the entire small village. The night was quiet. Suddenly, Li Mu, who was sitting cross-legged on the bed, became alert. His eyes suddenly opened and he took out a talisman to ward off evil spirits. On the fulu, there was a faint fluorescent light flickering. Huiyuan, who was sitting on the praying mat on the ground, moved his ears. His eyes suddenly opened and he held the huge staff. "There's danger." The two of them got up at the same time and rushed out of the room. They only saw two figures that had already flown out of the courtyard. Li Mu and Huiyuan rushed out of the courtyard and saw more than 10 black figures appear in the direction of the village entrance. They were running towards the village. Their movements weren't like the zombies that Li Mu saw last time. Instead, they were running stiffly. Their speed couldn't be compared to the one in Jianghu family village. The few of them didn't have time to think about why there would be zombies in Zhou County. They immediately went to meet them. Hanja threw out a fulu. The fulu stuck to a living corpse and immediately ignited. The living corpse only had time to let out a low roar before its entire body was engulfed in flames and turned into ashes in a short time. The little monk Huiyuan's body faintly emitted a golden light. He waved the huge staff in his hand and smashed it on the head of a living corpse. The living corpse's head was smashed into pieces, but its body wasn't affected. Huiyuan smashed it with the staff again and quickly rushed over. With a few strikes of the staff, the living corpse was smashed into the ground and didn't move anymore. Hanja threw out another fulu. Li Mu's eyes blazed with flames once again. In a short time, 5 to 6 living corpses were turned into ashes by their hands. Li Mu's eyelids twitched. There were only 10 or so living corpses attacking the village. In the blink of an eye, half of them were killed and turned into ashes. Nothing was left. How could he take the courage of the living corpses? In order to prevent more living corpses from falling into their hands, Li Mu wanted to join the battle. Li Qing waved her hand and several fulu flew out and stuck to the living corpses' foreheads. The living corpses immediately stopped moving. It's just a few low-level living corpses. Is there a need to mobilize so many people? Wu Bo yawned and walked out of the room. After taking a look, he turned around and walked back. Hanja took out the fulu and was about to burn them when Li Qing said, "Wait." Hanja was stunned for a moment and asked, "What are we going to do with them?" Li Qing walked to the side of a living corpse and made a hand seal. A green light hit the living corpse. After waiting for a long time, the corpse didn't have any reaction. She stood in front of the living corpse and frowned. Li Mu walked to her side and also noticed the abnormality. What Li Qing used just now was indeed the method of extracting the soul from the living corpse that she found from Old Wang. However, she didn't draw out the courage from the living corpse. Either the living corpse didn't have the courage, or the method given by Old Wang was wrong. Li Mu thought about it and felt that the latter was unlikely. Although Old Wang was old and had a lot of small problems, he was absolutely reliable at this critical moment. It should be that the living corpse didn't have the courage. Li Mu looked at Li Qing and said, "Maybe he hasn't harmed anyone yet. Let's try another one." Li Qing obviously thought of this possibility. She nodded and walked to another living corpse. She made another hand seal, but the living corpse still didn't respond. She walked to the third one, the fourth one. After testing the remaining living corpses, the two found that none of the living corpses had the slightest trace of courage. If there were only 1 or 2 living corpses, it could be explained by them not harming anyone. However, all the living corpses had no souls. This reason didn't make sense. Especially the last few, there were still traces of dried blood at the corners of their mouths. It was obvious that they had sucked the essence, blood, and soul of people. However, Li Mu didn't see the existence of courage in their bodies when he used clairvoyance. Li Mu was puzzled and asked, "How can this be?" If all the zombies didn't have a soul, his plan of extracting the zombies' courage to refine the 4th soul would fail. Li Qing glanced at the living corpses and said, "Let's burn them first. Tomorrow morning, we'll go to the other villages to take a look." Chapter 94. Early the next morning, Li Mu and the others bid farewell to the old official and continued their journey into the depths of Zhou County. The living corpses that appeared last night weren't much of a threat. Even if Han Zhe and the others didn't make a move, the cultivators gathered in the small village could easily deal with them. The real danger of Zhou County was still ahead of them. In the areas where the zombie disaster was the most serious, the zombies that moved in groups weren't low-level living corpses, but jumping zombies. Even if a cultivator of the spirit condensation realm encountered them, they would die on the spot if they weren't careful. However, Li Mu wasn't worried about the threat of the jumping zombies. Instead, he was worried about where the courage in the zombies' bodies had gone. If he couldn't obtain enough courage from these zombies, then his trip to Zhou County wouldn't have much meaning. After leaving the small village, the road ahead was full of barren and dilapidated villages. These villages didn't have any signs of life. The doors of the houses were wide open, the roofs had collapsed, and the walls were broken. Deep fingerprints were left on the walls, which was a ghastly sight. Standing in front of this dead and desolate village, Li Mu and the others finally understood how serious the zombie disaster in Zhou County was. The bigger villages were still fine, but small villages with only a dozen or so families often turned into zombies. The number of innocent people who died in this disaster was already more than 1,000. Zhou County's county magistrate was responsible for such a thing. He had already been removed from his post and investigated by the county governor. The entire Zhou County was also directly taken over by the higher-ups. Roar! A black shadow suddenly rushed out of the wreckage and pounced on Li Mu and the others. It was a black dog. To be precise, it was a corpse dog. Its head had already partially rotted, revealing the eerie white bones. It opened its bloody mouth and spat out a nauseating stench as it viciously bit at Wu Bo. Humans weren't the only ones who could turn into zombies. Cows, sheep, pigs, dogs, and other animals that had been bitten by zombies also had a certain chance of turning into such bloodthirsty evil creatures. Wu Bo's body size was even larger than Li Mu, Li Qing, Han Zhe, and the little monk Huiyuan put together. Naturally, he became the main target of this dead dog. Wu Bo snorts coldly. Li Mu sees a white light flashing in front of his eyes. The dead dog's body is split into two halves from the middle. After falling to the ground, it stops moving. Li Mu's gaze slightly congealed. This fatty's cultivation was already at the peak of assembled spirit. Although his body was huge, his movements were not slow at all. Li Mu simply could not see him make a move. For that little snake demon to be able to escape from his hands, it could be considered to have some ability. Amitabha. Huiyuan couldn't help but recite the name of Buddha. Looking at the two halves of the dog's body, he said with pity, "I hope you can be reborn in paradise and have a good reincarnation in your next life." Wu Bo sneered and said, "These evil creatures have no souls. I'm afraid they can't be reincarnated." Huiyuan used his staff to dig a pit and buried the dog's body in it. Only then did they continue their journey. Along the way, they encountered a few more uninhabited villages, but they were not as desolate as before. The doors in the villages were all locked. The villagers should have temporarily gone to other places to avoid the disaster. Usually, the people lived very scattered. The current situation was special. In order to make it easier to manage, the North County governor had ordered the people of Zhou County to gather together. Other than the gathering place, there were no other places in Zhou County. Along the way, in addition to the dead dog, they also encountered a few living corpses and a jumping zombie hiding in the dark. Jumping zombies didn't like sunlight and were stronger at night. The strength they could use during the day was greatly reduced. Han Zhe's divine ability was able to separate its head from its body. However, in his body he still couldn't guide out its courage. Han Zhe's summoning divine ability had made Li Mu envious for a long time. Although he was at the soul condensation realm, he could easily kill a soul condensation realm cultivator with that move. Unfortunately, even Li Qing didn't understand this kind of divine ability that was close to a Dao technique. In the ancestral court of Fulu school, only a few people could practice it. Moreover, the various sects valued Dao techniques very much. They wouldn't teach them to disciples who weren't from the same sect. If one didn't know the true words, even if they knew the hand gestures, they wouldn't be able to use it unless they searched the souls of the core disciples of the various sects who knew Dao techniques. And this path had always been a shortcut to death for the heretical cultivation. Not to mention that in order to prevent Tao techniques from being spread, the disciples who were taught Tao techniques had to swear that they wouldn't teach it to others and also learn to resist the soul-searching technique. Even if they had heretical cultivation and successfully searched their souls and learned superior Tao techniques, it would still be difficult for them to escape from the pursuit of the sect's experts. For the heretical cultivation who killed the sect's geniuses and secretly learned Tao techniques, the experts of the six Taoist sects would scatter their ashes. Heretical cultivation who didn't have this kind of thought could still survive by hiding. Once they had this kind of thought and put it into action, their life would enter the countdown. Li Mu no longer thought about Han's divine ability. They followed the old official's guidance for dozens of miles and finally saw a large village. The outer perimeter of the village was surrounded by a stone wall. Above the stone wall, there was a watchtower built at intervals. When Li Mu and the others approached, they found that the outer perimeter of the stone wall was covered with a layer of glutinous rice. Such a strong fortification couldn't be broken by ordinary zombies at all. Even jumping zombies could block it. Is that Junior Brother Han? As the few of them walked in, a surprised voice suddenly came from the top of the stone wall. Hanja looked up and said with a smile on his face, Senior Brother Qin, long time no see. A man jumped down from the stone wall, looked up and down at Hanja, and said with a smile, Junior Brother Han, I haven't seen you for half a year. Your cultivation has improved a lot. You should be able to gather your spirit soon, right? I'm still far from it. Hanja smiled embarrassedly, looked up and down at Senior Brother Qin, and said with surprise, Senior Brother, your progress is fast. You just gathered your spirit last year. Now I can't see through it at all. Are you going to break through to the middle realm soon? How can it be so fast? I don't have your talent. I just worked hard for half a year. Senior Brother Qin smiled and didn't continue this topic. He looked at Wu Bo and Li Qing and said, I remember that you were training in the Yangqiu County government. These two should be Junior Sister Li and Junior Brother Wu of Ziyun Peak. These two are, Hanja introduced them to him. This is Master Huiyuan, from the Heart sect of Buddhism. This is Li Mu, my colleague in the county government. The ancestral court of the Talisman Puppet sect had a total of 7 branches. This time, they had sent many disciples down the mountain to quell the chaos. The person guarding this village happened to be Han's senior brother. They walked into the village through the gate and saw that the situation was much better than before. The open space outside the houses was crowded with temporary straw huts. The people who had temporarily moved here lived in the straw huts. Although the people gathered here looked more or less tired, there was not much fear or worry on their faces. The high wall built outside the village and the cultivators stationed here gave them a great sense of security. Hanja asked as he walked, How's the situation here? Senior Brother Qin shook his head and said, Those zombies hide underground during the day. When the sun sets, they come out and attack the village where the people gather. It's fine during the day, but at night, we still don't have enough people. Looking at Li Mu and the others, he smiled again and said, Why don't you all stay here? With you all here, there's nothing to be afraid of. In the nearby zombie hordes, other than a few powerful jumping zombies, there's nothing to be afraid of. The situation in Zhou County was that the closer one was to the county town, the denser the zombie hordes and the stronger the zombies. The Fulu school and the prefectural governor had gathered the transcendent state cultivators and most of the assembled spirit cultivators to guard the county town. In the outskirts of the county town, where the zombie disaster was not too serious, one assembled spirit cultivator was enough to guard it. Wu Bo's cultivation was the highest. In theory, they had to listen to Wu Bo's arrangements. Along the way, he did not exercise this authority. He also did not raise any objections to Senior Brother Qin's idea. However, the quieter he was, the more uncomfortable Li Mu felt. Especially when he glanced at Li Mu, it made Li Mu feel like he was being watched by a poisonous snake. Although Li Mu did not offend him in any way, Wu Bo was narrow-minded and had a violent personality. He could not be judged by ordinary people. Being watched by an assembled spirit cultivator was not a good thing. Li Mu had already raised his guard against him. Senior Brother Qin led them into a courtyard and said, I'll have to trouble you all to rest here first. Wu Bo walked into his room and looked back at the others. He said, "If there's nothing else, don't disturb me." Hanja looked at Wu Bo's back with dissatisfaction. He said to senior brother Qin, "Wu Bo is always like this. Senior brother, don't mind him. Just ignore him." Senior brother Qin smiled and said, "How can that be? Junior brother Wu is talented and is elder Wu's grandson. It's understandable that he's a little more arrogant than us ordinary disciples." Recommended a book by a friend, The Surprising Son-in-Law. I just want to be a good son-in-law. But big brothers, don't always look for me. Forcing me to become the richest man. Forcing me to become a powerful official. Forcing me to save thorny roses, icy mountains, cute little cuties. This was a book about being forced to become a king. There were all kinds of schemes and tricks. Chapter 95. The village that Li Mu and the others were currently in was called Jianghu village. Jianghu village had a population of nearly 100 households. It was considered a big village in Zhou County. Because the village was very compact, it was easy to build fortifications. Therefore, it became the first choice for the nearby residents to avoid disaster. Outside of Jianghu village, there were no living creatures within a radius of 20 miles. If the zombies wanted to suck human blood, they could only attack this place. In the next 3 days, Jianghu village experienced several waves of zombies. Last night alone, 3 waves of zombies found this place. However, among those zombies, most of them were low-level living corpses. Their movements were slow and they couldn't jump high. Just the stone wall outside was enough to block them. The truly troublesome ones were the few jumping zombies in each wave of zombies. Jumping zombies could jump dozens of feet. With a jump, they could jump over the roof. This kind of stone wall couldn't stop them. With the current lineup of Jianghu village, in theory, without the flying zombie, no matter how many waves of zombies there were, they would just be giving them courage. However, the mystery that troubled Li Mu and Li Qing still hadn't been solved. In the past 3 days, dozens of zombies had died in their hands. However, no matter if they were low-level zombies or jumping zombies, they didn't have a trace of courage in their bodies. This made Li Mu even suspect Old Wang's profession. Could it be that zombies didn't have courage in their bodies? If this information was wrong, Li Mu's trip to Zhou County was destined to be a wasted trip. Not only that, he also wasted a few days. It would be better for him to stay in the county office and obediently refine his fear. Hanja's senior brother made a suggestion after the 3 waves of zombies last night. Instead of passively defending every day, it would be better to take the initiative to attack during the day when the zombies were asleep and couldn't move. They could eliminate them in one fell swoop and solve the problem once and for all. Hanja and Wu Bo discussed and agreed with senior brother Qin's idea. Including senior brother Qin, there were 3 divine realm cultivators here. Huiyuan and Hanja were also in the soul condensing realm and had supernatural powers. With such a combination, even if they encountered the flying zombie, they still had the strength to fight head-on. Li Qin came over and said to Li Mu, "Your cultivation is too low. Stay in the village this time to take care of the people." Li Mu shook his head and said, "I'll go with you." Li Qin was worried about Li Mu and Li Mu was worried about her. The zombie disaster in Zhou County was different from the one in Jianghu village. Like Li Qing, there were also divine realm cultivators who died. Without him by her side, Li Mu was not at ease at all. Li Qing had already condensed her soul. If she really encountered danger that she couldn't solve, as long as Li Mu was by her side, her soul could leave her body at any time and attach to Li Mu's body, allowing Li Mu to borrow her power. Although her cultivation was not as good as Su He's, it was enough for Li Mu. With the help of Dao techniques, he could exert power above the divine realm for a short period of time. Moreover, according to Li Mu's experience, it was usually safer to go out than to stay in this kind of situation. Li Qing didn't agree and said, "We're going to go underground and look for the zombie cave. It's too dangerous there. You should stay here." Li Mu made a gesture of the 6-ding jade maiden seal and smiled, "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." Seeing his insistence, Li Qing's lips moved, but in the end, she nodded in agreement. Lightning was the nemesis of demons and ghosts. With his current cultivation, he could instantly summon lightning. Whether it was zombies or jumping zombies, they would all turn into ashes under the lightning. Although it was dangerous to go out, as a cultivator, he would have to face more demons and ghosts in the future. To him, it was not a bad thing to experience more danger. Senior brother Qin thought and said, although we'll be back before dark, it's best to have one more person stay in the village just in case something happens. He looked at Hanja and said, Junior brother Han, why don't you stay? Hanja thought and nodded. The three of you are all in the realm of concentration. If you work together, you can deal with the flying stiff. Little Master Huiyuan is stronger than me and is more useful. I'll stay. Although there were still some cultivators in Jianghu village, they were all ordinary cultivators in the refining soul and condensing soul. Hanja hadn't reached the realm of concentration yet, but he had a supernatural power that was comparable to the realm of concentration. With him guarding the village, it was enough to ensure that the village would be safe. Senior brother Qin nodded and looked at Li Mu in surprise, asking, Constable Li Mu, are you going too? Li Mu smiled and said, Don't worry, I won't be a burden to you. I also have some secret skills to deal with zombies. Since Li Mu said so, senior brother Qin couldn't say anything more. He looked at the sun above his head and said, This matter shouldn't be delayed. The yang qi is strong now, so the time is right. Let's set off as soon as possible. Hanja stayed in Jianghu village. Li Qing, Wu Bo, senior brother Qin, Li Mu, and the little monk Huiyuan took on the responsibility of getting rid of the zombies. White zombies, black zombies, jumping zombies, and zombies that were bitten by zombies were all low-level zombies. Sunlight couldn't kill them, but it could make them afraid and greatly reduce their strength. Therefore, during the day, they would hide in caves, tombs, and other dark corners. After sunset, they would come out to harm people. The caves, tombs, and villages in Zhou County that could hide zombies had been explored by cultivators. The zombies hiding in these places had been eliminated long ago. Only the underground karst caves were difficult to explore because of the complicated terrain and the lack of sunlight all year round. Even cultivators in the spirit-gathering state didn't dare to go too deep. On a mountainside more than 10 miles away from Jianghu village, Li Mu and the others stood on the mountainside, facing a huge cave. Senior brother Qin took out a map and said, This is the only underground karst cave near Jianghu village. Those zombies are very likely to be hiding here. This is the topographic map drawn by the villagers. Everyone remember it well. If there are any changes, retreat immediately. Li Qing memorized the map and turned to Li Mu. Stay with me later. Don't go too far. Senior brother Qin took out a few fulu and said, These fulu can conceal our qi. We won't be easily discovered by them. Keep it well and carry it with you. They're just a few animals without intelligence. Do we need to be so timid? Wu Bo said lightly. His fat body led the way into the karst cave. Huiyuan placed his Buddhist staff outside the cave. He only held an alms bowl in his hand. The terrain in the karst cave was complicated. His Buddhist staff was too big. It couldn't be used in many places. Instead, it would become a burden. Li Mu didn't know how to fight without an alms bowl. They couldn't just use it as a brick. But when he thought about Xuandu, he felt that it was not impossible. They walked into the karst cave silently. Darkness gradually fell in front of them. After 2 turns and dozens of steps, they couldn't see any light anymore. Cultivators in the spirit-gathering state could sense with their primordial spirit. Darkness couldn't affect them. Huiyuan's eyes flashed with a faint golden light. He seemed to be unaffected by the darkness. Li Mu used his heavenly eye and saw the situation in the karst cave. They were walking in a narrow passage. This passage was very cramped. It could only allow a few people to pass. Wu Bo alone could block the entire passage. On both sides of the passage, there were marks that looked like they were cut by knives and axes. If one looked carefully, they would find that the marks were 5 neat lines. They looked more like they were scratched with fingernails. The deeper they went, the more slippery the ground became. Everyone's footsteps were very light. The sound of water dripping on the walls could be heard clearly. After walking for a while, Wu Bo stopped. He said lightly, There's corpse energy. It's really here. Senior brother Qin said with a serious expression, the zombie horde should be in front of us. Right now, the yang energy is the strongest. They should all be sleeping. Everyone be careful. We must restrain our breath. Don't wake them up. In this narrow passage, cultivators couldn't use their full strength. The zombies had copper skin and iron bones. They were also not afraid of death. They could cause them a lot of trouble. Even though he knew that the zombies couldn't hear, Li Mu still lightened his footsteps. After walking for another 100 or so steps, their eyes suddenly opened up. This winding passage led to a huge cave. There were other passages around the cave. They didn't know where they led. Li Mu didn't know how big the cave was. But with his celestial eye, he saw that the cave was filled with corpses. It made his scalp tingle. There were at least 100 of these corpses. They were wearing tattered clothes and emitted a strong corpse energy. Li Mu held his breath in time to avoid being poisoned by the corpse energy. Li Mu frowned slightly as he glanced at the zombies. The darkness had little effect on him. With his celestial eye, he could clearly see that in this cave, no matter if it was the low-level zombies or the jumping zombies, they didn't have any courage. Old Wang said that the evolution of low-level zombies mainly depended on blood, essence, and courage. Could it be that Old Wang was wrong? No, although most of the zombies had nothing in their bodies, the few jumping zombies in the middle were emitting weak courage. Li Mu continued to look around. In the next moment, his attention was attracted by a black shadow on a huge rock in the middle of the cave. It wasn't just because all the zombies in this cave were standing. It was the only one lying down. It was also because its body was filled with an extremely strong courage. In Li Mu's eyes, such boldness was extremely dazzling. As its chest rose and fell, the remaining courage in the few jumping zombies also left their bodies and entered the black shadow's body. Chapter 96. Li Mu finally understood why there was no charisma in the bodies of the zombies. It was because the charisma in their bodies had been sucked dry by the zombie on the boulder. Even though the zombie was in a deep slumber, the pressure it gave Li Mu was much greater than the pressure it gave the older landlord Jiang. Senior brother Qin looked at the boulder in the center of the cave and his expression changed slightly. He said in a low voice, "This is not good. Even if this zombie is not as strong as the flying stiff, it's very close. Everyone, hold your breath and don't wake it up. Under normal circumstances, it won't wake up easily until the sun sets." He took out a stack of fulu that he had prepared beforehand and said, "This is the corpse-fixing talisman. We'll fix the other zombies first and then work together to deal with the one on the boulder. Once the situation changes, we'll retreat immediately. If we make a move here, it's very disadvantageous for us." Li Mu was also given a dozen fulu. There was a complicated rune on the top of the fulu and the words, "Here comes the great general," were written below. Zombies' habit was to hide during the day and come out at night. Taking advantage of the fact that they were in a deep slumber, they would first fix the group of zombies silently and then work together to deal with the zombie on the boulder. This was to prevent it from waking up the group of zombies and surrounding them. Although the zombies in the group of zombies were not very strong, there were too many of them. After they woke up, they would bring a lot of trouble to them. Li Qin, Wu Bo, and senior brother Qin only needed to raise their hands and the fulu would accurately stick it on the zombies' foreheads. This move actually involved the ability to summon objects, which Li Mu did not know yet. He wandered around the edge of the group of zombies and stuck the fulu onto the zombies one by one. However, his attention was always on the zombie in the middle. That zombie had absorbed the charisma of all the other zombies here. If he could extract its charisma, he would be able to condense the fourth charisma in one fell swoop. There might even be some leftovers that he could share with Lu Hanyan and Wanwan. Li Mu held his breath and focused his attention on the fulu. Looking at the zombies in front of him, he couldn't help but sigh. A few months ago, these zombies were also living people in Zhou County. They could live a peaceful life for the rest of their lives. But now they had become evil creatures without consciousness. They looked like monsters and ghosts, but they were not. This was the first time Li Mu had seen the cruelty of this ghost-ridden world. Although his heart was moved, now was not the time to feel pity. Li Mu shook his head and picked up the last piece of fulu. Just as he was about to place it on a zombie's forehead, the zombie's tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. Two dark green lights appeared in the darkness in front of him. Almost at the same time, Li Mu felt a strong sense of danger all around him. Not good. Li Mu had been restraining his aura. For some reason, the sleeping zombies around him suddenly woke up. He only had one corpse securing talisman left in his hand. No matter which one he secured, he would be attacked by the others. Li Mu didn't have time to think. He directly placed the last corpse securing talisman on his forehead. The claws of the zombies around him suddenly stopped in midair. They instinctively felt that there was something in front of them that they didn't like and were afraid of. At this time, only half of the zombies in the crowd were secured. After the zombies around Li Mu were awakened, dozens of pairs of dark green eyes suddenly appeared in the huge underground cave. The zombies that weren't secured woke up at the same time under the influence of the aura of these zombies. The aura of the sleeping shadow on the huge rock in the middle of the cave also became very unstable. It seemed that it would wake up at any time. A dozen jumping zombies were the first to wake up. In this cave, they seemed to be able to sense the presence of the group and immediately rushed toward the 5 people. The rest of the living corpses also formed a circle around the group. Although the cave was wide, it was dark underground and full of corpse aura. Fighting here was extremely disadvantageous for them, but it didn't affect the zombies at all. Suddenly, Senior Brother Qin's expression changed greatly. He immediately said, "This is not the place to fight. Everyone retreat first." After saying that, he took the lead and rushed to the entrance of the cave. The little monk Huiyuan followed closely behind him. The teleport talisman on Li Mu's legs flashed. His body turned into an afterimage and quickly approached the entrance of the cave. Li Qing looked back. Although Li Mu was far from the entrance of the cave, with the speed of the teleport talisman, he could safely escape before the zombies surrounded them. She forced back 2 jumping zombies with her sword and flashed into the tunnel from which she came. She turned back and said, "Go quickly." Li Mu sped up again and arrived at the entrance of the cave in an instant. However, just as he was about to enter the tunnel, his vision suddenly turned dark. A huge figure had entered before him. Wu Bo rushed into the entrance of the cave first. His figure paused for a moment. This pause was very short. It was so short that it could be ignored under normal circumstances. However, at this critical moment, Li Mu's figure had to pause for a moment. This short pause was enough for several jumping zombies to catch up. The road ahead was blocked by Wu Bo. Li Mu had already smelled the thick corpse aura gushing from behind. If he continued to stay in the same place, he would be courting death. He could only roll to one side and avoid the attacks of the jumping zombies. After pausing for a moment, Wu Bo's figure flashed into the tunnel with a cold smile on his face. Li Mu didn't manage to escape. 2 jumping zombies attacked him while the others quickly chased into the tunnel. More and more zombies rushed into the tunnel. If he rushed in now, he would definitely die under the pincer attack. He quickly formed a seal with his hands. A blinding white lightning lit up the entire cave. However, it didn't hit any of the jumping zombies. With Li Mu's current strength, it was already very rare for him to be able to release the lightning technique. The jumping zombies were agile. Li Mu couldn't accurately hit them. Although they didn't hit, they still instinctively took a few steps back and stopped attacking Li Mu. Instead, they urged the surrounding zombies to rush forward. Under the urging of the jumping zombies, the fulu on Li Mu's forehead was no longer intimidating to the zombies. Li Mu cursed in his heart, who said that zombies were brainless. These jumping zombies were obviously trying to exhaust Li Mu's magic power. In a situation where zombies were all around, if his magic power was exhausted, Li Qing would probably only be able to see him at night when the zombies attacked Jianghu village. He didn't waste any more magic power. With Bai Yi in his hand, he chopped down the zombies that approached him one by one. In the tunnel, Li Qing's expression was cold. She looked at Wu Bo and said coldly, "Get out of the way." Wu Bo shook his head and said regretfully, "Junior Li, he didn't chase after us. There's nothing we can do. It's not like you don't know the situation in the cave. If you go in now, you might lose your life. Get out of the way. Wu Bo stood still and said firmly, I'm your senior. I can't let you take the risk. Boom. A purple lightning suddenly appeared in this narrow tunnel and struck Wu Bo's feet. Li Qing said coldly, get out of the way or die. Wu Bo took a step back. His scalp was numb and his back was drenched in cold sweat. Just now, he really smelled the scent of death. Dao technique. He instantly moved to the side and made a path. His expression was terrified and he said with a trembling voice, where did you learn this Dao technique? Li Qing didn't pay any attention to her and rushed into the cave. Huiyuan came back with the alms bowl and said coldly, Constable Wu, don't think that I don't know. You were the one who awakened the zombie just now. You didn't care about everyone's safety and deliberately framed your colleagues. When I go back, I'll report it to my superiors. After saying that, he chased after Li Qing. Wu Bo didn't expect his little trick to be seen through. His face was gloomy. He looked back and said coldly, if that's the case, all of you can go to hell. He snorted and rushed out of the tunnel without looking back. Senior brother Qin ran at the front. He looked back and said in surprise, where are they? Wu Bo said with a sullen face, they want to die. They can't blame others. In the underground cave, Li Mu was chopping the living corpses when a rumbling thunder suddenly sounded in his ears. Several bolts of lightning descended from the sky, and the few living corpses around him were directly blasted into ashes. Li Mu looked back and his eyes lit up. He said in surprise, Boss? Li Qing flew over and landed beside Li Mu. She grabbed his wrist and said, let's go. At the entrance of the cave, Huiyuan's body emitted a faint golden light. Wherever he went, the corpses retreated. He slowly walked to the two and said, the tunnel has been blocked by the corpses. It's too narrow. I'm afraid we can't leave easily. When his voice fell, the three of them suddenly heard an angry roar. In the middle of the cave, the zombie on the huge rock finally woke up completely. However, it only glanced at Li Mu and the other two before jumping down the huge rock and disappearing into the cave. Li Mu was shocked and said in a low voice, it has intelligence. Not long after, Li Mu heard a few angry roars coming from the tunnel. Two sorry figures flew out of the cave and appeared in front of them again. The zombie slowly walked out of the tunnel. It turned its eyes and scanned Li Mu and the others. Li Mu thought that the zombie was going to let the three of them go. He didn't expect that it wanted to catch them all in one fell swoop. Wu Bo and senior brother Qin, who had already left, were forced back by it. Senior brother Qin retreated to the side of the three. With a serious expression, he reminded, it's about to evolve into a flying stiff. It's the king of these zombies. Everyone be careful. With the return of the zombie king, the zombies in the cave became restless and began to attack everyone recklessly. Boom. Li Qing formed a seal with both hands and a few more bolts of lightning descended, striking a few jumping zombies. However, the jumping zombies were not turned into ashes. Black smoke rose from their bodies as they continued to charge forward fearlessly. Li Mu could clearly feel that these bolts of lightning were much weaker than the previous ones. Under normal circumstances, these jumping zombies would definitely die under the lightning technique. Li Qing's expression turned serious as she said, this cave is filled with corpse aura and is isolated from the outside world. Spiritual qi cannot be replenished. We can't use lightning techniques anymore. Otherwise, the spiritual qi here will be exhausted and we won't be able to use any other divine abilities. She drew her azure rainbow sword. With a flash of sword light, a zombie that was close to them was beheaded. Huiyuan retracted the golden light on his body. He held the alms bowl with one hand and smashed it on the head of a zombie. Bang! The zombie's head was directly smashed apart. It fell to the ground and twitched a few times before becoming motionless. Li Mu took out a few fulu from his bosom and threw them at a zombie that was pouncing at him. The fulu spontaneously combusted in the air. After coming into contact with the zombie, the latter immediately turned into a raging flame, illuminating the entire underground cave. Senior brother Qin held a stack of fulu in his hand. After a few waves of his hand, several zombies turned into fireballs. Wu Bo wanted to escape from the tunnel he came from several times, but he was forced back by the zombie king. It did not fight with Wu Bo. It only controlled the other zombies in the cave to besiege them. The zombie king roared angrily again. In the cave, a cold wind suddenly blew, and the corpse securing talismans on the foreheads of half of the living corpses that had been frozen by Li Mu and the others dropped one by one. With another wave of living corpses, the pressure on Li Mu instantly increased. Not only that, under the summons of the zombie king, new zombies continuously surged in from the many tunnels around the cave. Although these zombies were not strong, there were a lot of them. If this continued, the few of them would be trapped here alive. This zombie king had clearly developed basic intelligence. It did not make a move itself. It had been using these low-level zombies to consume their Fulu and Ifeili. Senior brother Qin's face turned pale. He said, "This can't go on. Our Ifeili will be exhausted sooner or later." Amitba, Huiyuan suddenly chanted a Buddhist chant. Around his body, golden light shone brightly, forming a light barrier. When the zombies around him touched the golden light, they emitted white smoke and immediately retreated in fear. Even the jumping zombies stopped attacking and stood outside the golden light hesitantly. Huiyuan looked at Li Mu and the others and said, "Everyone gather around me. They don't dare to come close." Li Mu and Li Qing were the closest to him and immediately walked into the golden light. Senior brother Qin and Wu Bo, after killing a few zombies, also successfully joined them. The zombies were afraid of the golden light and did not dare to approach. The zombie king roared again and again. A large amount of black gas appeared around its body and pressed towards the golden light. When the black gas and the golden light came into contact, they immediately rolled and boiled. Fine beads of sweat gradually appeared on Huiyuan's forehead. Li Mu saw that it was very difficult for him to maintain the Buddhist light and said, "Little Master Huiyuan, lend me some of your Fa Li." Huiyuan turned his head to look at him and grabbed his wrist with one hand. Li Mu felt an endless stream of Buddhist Fa Li entering his body. He silently chanted the Heart Sutra. Outside his body, a golden light quickly appeared. It was several times brighter than Huiyuan's Buddhist light. Huiyuan was stunned for a moment and immediately understood. Although Li Mu's cultivation was not as good as his, the sutra he cultivated was definitely extraordinary. His root of wisdom was also much deeper than his. He might as well withdraw his divine ability and wholeheartedly transfer the Fa Li in his body into Li Mu's body. The golden light outside Li Mu's body became even brighter, but it did not spread outwards. Instead, it contracted inwards. An even more solid golden light completely enveloped the four people's bodies. Only Wu Bo's body had a human-shaped gap, exposing more than half of his body outside. Li Mu grinned at him and said, "Sorry, my Fa Li is limited. Constable Wu, it would be better if you were a little thinner." Li Qing glanced at Li Mu and did not say anything. Huiyuan held back his laughter and continued to transfer Fa Li. More than half of Wu Bo's body was exposed outside the golden light and immediately became the target of the zombies' attacks. A few jumping zombies pounced over, their inch-long purple nails piercing straight into his body. The human-shaped gap on the golden light was clearly targeted at him. Wu Bo's face instantly darkened. He looked at Li Mu with a venomous gaze and took the initiative to leave the light. He threw a Fulu at those jumping zombies. When the Fulu was thrown out, it formed a lightning net that covered the sky and wrapped those jumping zombies inside. Lightning flashed and those jumping zombies were wrapped in the lightning net. Their bodies trembled a few times and then stopped moving. The heavenly thunder contained in the lightning talisman was obviously not as good as the real lightning technique, but it was still able to completely restrain these jumping zombies. Li Mu looked at Wu Bo indifferently from within the light barrier. The little monk Huiyuan had already told him the reason why those zombies suddenly woke up. Wu Bo was extremely vicious. When he first met Li Mu, he had already done something to him. Just now, he deliberately woke up the zombies and blocked Li Mu's escape route at the crucial moment. Obviously, he wanted Li Mu to die here. Li Mu had no grievances with him in the past, nor did he have any enmity with him. However, he was so ruthless to Li Mu. If he did not take revenge, Li Mu would not be able to forgive himself. He was even more hateful than that black-robe man. If he wanted Li Mu to die, then he would not be able to live well either. Wu Bo was worthy of being an assembled spirit cultivator. He was also the descendant of the Fulu school's elder. As a core disciple, he had much more resources in the Fulu school than Li Qing. He did not need to move at all. He only needed to take out all kinds of Fulu from his body. The zombies that had almost filled the cave were unable to get close to him. After throwing out countless Fulu, Wu Bo reached into his clothes and searched. He could no longer feel any Fulu. The other Fulu on him were either not suitable for this kind of situation or were too precious. He was unwilling to use them. Wu Bo once again looked fiercely in the direction of Li Mu and the others. He shouted, "What are you doing hiding there? Come and help." Li Qing coldly looked at him and ignored him. Huiyuan curled his lips and said, "Serves you right." Senior brother Qin smiled bitterly and shook his head. He walked out of the light barrier and said, "I'll go help him." He raised his sword and chopped down a few zombies. He quickly came to Wu Bo's side and faced the zombies around him together. In the cave, zombies continuously surged over. The zombie king had yet to make a move. Wu Bo gritted his teeth and took out another Fulu from his sleeve. He said to senior brother Qin, "Protect me." Wu Bo made a hand seal towards the Fulu. Li Mu felt a powerful fluctuation of spirit energy from the Fulu. "It's an Earth Stage Fulu." Senior brother Qin's face was filled with joy. He said, "Junior brother Wu actually has an Earth Stage Fulu. I'll protect you. Quickly activate it and kill these evil beings in one fell swoop." The Earth Stage Fulu was extremely powerful and required a period of time to activate. Wu Bo turned his back to senior brother Qin. His hands changed seals and activated the talisman with all his strength. Puff, after a soft sound, his hand stopped moving. Wu Bo slowly lowered his head and saw a bloody hand stretching out from his chest. In the palm of the hand, there was a beating heart. The bloody hand clenched hard and the heart was crushed. Chapter 97. Wu Bo's chest was pierced and his heart was crushed. He turned his head with difficulty and looked at senior brother Qin. He hissed. Behind him, senior brother Qin grinned and said with a smile, "You even have an earth rank Fulu. As expected of a core disciple, the eldest son of an elder, your wealth is really rich. It really makes people envious." The sudden change not only made Wu Bo feel disbelief, but Li Mu's face also showed shock. Just now, he saw a scene that he never expected. Senior brother Qin, who was also a disciple of the Fulu school, took advantage of Wu Bo's earth rank Fulu to sneak attack from behind. His hand went through Wu Bo's chest and crushed his heart. Li Mu's first thought was that senior brother Qin and Wu Bo had a grudge against each other. But before this, they didn't show it at all. Li Qing instinctively took a step forward and stood in front of Li Mu, shielding him behind her. After the little monk Huiyuan came back to his senses, he looked at senior brother Qin with a solemn expression and murmured, "I didn't expect that benefactor Qin had already fallen into the devil's path." Senior brother Qin pulled his hand out of Wu Bo's chest. When he wiped the blood on his arm, he still had a faint smile on his face. He shook his head and said, "You core disciples, the eldest son of an elder, the sect provides you with courage for refining your soul, the sect provides you with soul power for condensing your soul, and the elders also give you precious Fulu." He looked at his blood-stained palm and said, "For ordinary disciples like us, no matter how hard we work, no matter how hard we cultivate, what's the use? We will still be easily overtaken by you. If we want to stand out, we can only rely on our own hands." Wu Bo's heart was crushed. His face was extremely pale, but his body did not collapse. He gritted his teeth and said, "You deliberately led us here." Senior brother Qin, who had always been kind, finally showed a sinister smile on his face. He said, "You deliberately framed your companion. Just like me, you're not a good person. It's not a pity that you're dead. You might as well help me." When he said these words, the zombie king only looked at him indifferently. The surrounding jumping zombies did not attack. Senior brother Qin bowed towards the zombie king from afar and said loudly, "Your Excellency Zombie King, according to our agreement, This person's soul essence belongs to you, and his primordial spirit belongs to me. The zombie king rolled his eyes, looked at Wu Bo's body, and suddenly took a deep breath. Li Mu felt that the soul in his body was unstable and almost left his body. He immediately focused his mind and firmly controlled the soul in his body. To be able to absorb a person's blood essence and soul from a distance, this zombie king was only a step away from being a flying stiff. Although it was not a flying stiff, it already had a portion of the flying stiff's abilities. Li Mu was affected, but Wu Bo's primordial spirit was still firmly in his body. The wound on his chest was also emitting a faint white light, and was rapidly healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Not only that, a new heart had appeared in his originally empty chest, and it was beating vigorously. Impossible! Senior Brother Qin's expression changed greatly. Then, he realized something and said in shock, "You actually have a heaven stage Fulu." In the blink of an eye, the wound on Wu Bo's chest had completely healed, and the Fulu in his hand had exhausted its spirit energy and turned into ashes. His expression was exceedingly gloomy. This heaven-rank talisman was capable of allowing severed limbs to regrow, and it was almost equivalent to possessing 2 lives. It was the only heaven-rank talisman he possessed, and it was extraordinarily precious. He'd utterly never imagined that he would have to use it at a time like this. He threw the earth stage Fulu in his hand into the air. After the Fulu stopped in the air, it released a white light, completely illuminating the cave. "You deserve to die." Wu Bo stared at Senior Brother Qin, the hatred in his eyes overflowing. The Fulu turned into a white light and finally condensed into a sword shadow. It floated in the air and emitted a terrifying aura. Wu Bo pointed at Senior Brother Qin and said resentfully, "Go to hell." The sword shadow turned into a stream of light and went straight for Senior Brother Qin. Even the weakest Earth Stage Fulu was enough to kill a divine ability cultivator. Senior Brother Qin was locked onto by the sword light. His expression changed greatly as he shouted, "Your Excellency Corpse King, save me." As soon as he finished speaking, a black shadow appeared in front of him out of thin air. Clang! The sword light struck the zombie king's body, causing sparks to fly in all directions. After one strike, the sword light disappeared. Even the zombie king's copper skin and iron bones had a deep wound on his back. His entire body was almost split in half. The boundless courage in his body circulated, and the wound on his back gradually wriggled and healed. Senior Brother Qin heaved a sigh of relief and immediately said, "Thank you, Your Excellency Corpse King." Before he could finish his sentence, he stopped abruptly. The zombie king stretched out his hands, and his sharp nails pierced into his neck. The blood essence in Senior Brother Qin's body was sucked into the zombie king's body in an instant. His body withered, and his primordial spirit escaped in fear. He said in panic, "Your Excellency Corpse King." Hiss! The zombie king sucked in a breath of air at his primordial spirit. Senior Brother Qin's primordial spirit directly collapsed, turning into specks of light that were sucked into the zombie king's body. Cultivators of the assembled god realm, who had just condensed their primordial spirit, could also use most divine abilities, and their strength would not be weakened by too much. However, this zombie king originally cultivated by sucking blood and souls, which just happened to restrain the soul and primordial spirit. As a cultivator of the assembled god realm, Senior Brother Qin still had a chance to escape if he fought with him head-on. However, he was suddenly attacked, and his body was destroyed, so his primordial spirit could not escape. After absorbing Senior Brother Qin's soul and primordial spirit, the wound on the zombie king's back had completely healed. The aura in his body also instantly soared, and his withered hair gradually turned black and lustrous. His shriveled skin, at a speed visible to the naked eye, became plump and rosy, and the corpse aura on his body disappeared without a trace. In the blink of an eye, the corpse's appearance became no different from a normal person. He took off Senior Brother Qin's clothes and put them on himself, turning into the appearance of a middle-aged man. He looked at Wu Bo with his gray eyes and greedily licked the corner of his mouth. Flying stiff, Li Qing held the cyan rainbow sword tightly and said in a low voice, Be careful, it has already evolved into a flying stiff. A zombie that had just evolved into a flying stiff had the strength of a fourth realm cultivator. After Wu Bo's body regained its vitality, his aura was much more sluggish than before. He instantly moved to the side of Li Qing and the others and said loudly, "It has already evolved into a flying stiff, it's not easy to deal with, everyone attack together." The sword light in Li Qing's hand shone even brighter, and Huiyuan also raised the alms bowl again. In front of a great enemy, it was not the time to be calculative about the grudges from before. Wu Bo flashed behind the two, but suddenly took out a fulu with spirit energy circulating on its surface and stuck it on his forehead. The surface of the fulu flashed with spirit energy, and his body directly burrowed into the ground, disappearing from the cave. Huiyuan looked back and found that Wu Bo had already disappeared, and said angrily, "It's the earth escape technique." Constable Wu ran away by himself. The 5 elements escape technique was a technique that could only be cultivated by those who had reached the transcendent realm. Wu Bo was indeed a core disciple of the Fulu school. He had an endless supply of Fulu. After he ran away, Li Mu and the others had to face this zombie king that had just evolved into a flying stiff. Li Mu cursed in his heart and used all his strength to activate the Buddha's light in his body. Li Qing's hands formed a seal, and the spirit energy in the cave surged. The zombie king seemed to have sensed danger and instinctively took a step back. Its ash-white eyes kept moving as if it was thinking. In the next moment, it abandoned Li Mu and the others and flew into a tunnel. In front of that tunnel, there was an aura that was quickly escaping. Wu Bo used the earth escape technique to leave the ground. When he saw the sunlight, he let out a long sigh of relief. Never had he imagined that his trip underground this time would actually be so dangerous. Not only had he encountered a zombie king that had evolved into a flying zombie, he'd even encountered a traitor from the Talisman sect, and it almost caused him to lose his life here. If it weren't for the few life-saving Fulu that his grandfather had given him, he would probably have died down there. After this battle, although he had saved his life, the Fulu on him had been used up. He didn't want to take the risk of fighting the flying stiff, so he abandoned his colleagues and used the Earth Escape Talisman to escape. After doing such a thing, he couldn't stay in Zhou County and Yangqiu County anymore. He could only return to the ancestral court and ask for his grandfather's protection. His mind raced, and just as he was about to escape, a black shadow suddenly descended from the sky. Chapter 98. Without the zombie king in the underground cave, the pressure on Li Mu and the other two was greatly reduced. Li Qing and Huiyuan dealt with the remaining few jumping zombies with all their strength, while Li Mu used the Buddha's light to protect his body while cleaning up the surrounding living corpses. The remaining few jumping zombies in the cave, as well as the living corpses that didn't have much fighting strength, were quickly eliminated by them. Unfortunately, the courage of these zombies was absorbed by the zombie king and used to evolve into flying stiff. Li Mu didn't get any benefits at all. After dealing with these troubles, the underground cave that was abnormally noisy suddenly became quiet. Amitba, Huiyuan walked to senior brother Qin's corpse, sighed and said, "On the path of cultivation, benefactor Qin couldn't resist the temptation." Li Mu also didn't expect senior brother Qin's change. Although he didn't know him for long, Li Mu's impression of him was very good. His temperament was indifferent, and he was amiable to everyone. He was offended by Wu Bo several times, but he didn't get angry. Li Mu didn't expect that he actually colluded with this zombie king that gave birth to intelligence, and secretly harmed the cultivators who came here to remove corpses. A dignified disciple of Fulu school was actually reduced to heretical cultivation. It made people sigh and feel pity. The cruelty of the cultivation world was once again vividly displayed in front of Li Mu's eyes. Li Qing cultivated bitterly for several years to reach the spirit realm. Ren Yuan could shorten this time to half a month or even 10 days by taking people's souls for cultivation. This kind of temptation wasn't something that everyone could withstand. Li Mu felt more and more that Old Wang was right. The essence of cultivation was the law of the jungle. Li Mu himself didn't have to harm others, but he couldn't guarantee that others wouldn't harm him. Senior brother Qin had given him a great warning. When encountering cultivators, even if the other party had no ill intentions, he still had to be careful and vigilant. He could not easily trust others. While Li Mu was lost in thought, there was a sudden movement in one of the passages. Li Mu's expression changed slightly, and the golden light on his body became even brighter. In the blink of an eye, a figure appeared at the entrance of the passage. Xuandu's bald head was particularly conspicuous under the illumination of the Buddha's light. He glanced around the cave, and when he saw Li Mu, he was stunned at first, and then his face showed great joy. He murmured, "Benefactor Li's root of wisdom is so deep. I was wrong last time." Seeing Xuandu, Li Mu quickly retracted his Buddha's aura to avoid being discovered. Huiyuan said in surprise, "Martial Uncle Xuandu, you're here too. It's martial nephew Huiyuan." Xuandu touched Huiyuan's bald head and said, "Yesterday, I happened to pass by here and found the corpse aura rising to the sky, so I came down to take a look. I didn't expect to get lost in this cave, and found my way here by following the Buddha's aura. We're also here to remove the corpse." Huiyuan smiled and then thought of something and said nervously, "Martial Uncle, there's a zombie here. It has evolved into a flying stiff and escaped. We have to get rid of it quickly or more innocent people will suffer." Xuandu looked around and said, "Let's go out first." Before leaving, Li Qing threw out a few Fulu cards and burned the zombie in the cave, as well as senior brother Qing's corpse, to ashes. The corpse poison of a flying stiff was even more potent than that of a jumping stiff. He died at the hands of a flying stiff. Only by burning him on the spot would he not turn into a zombie and cause trouble. After doing all this, the four of them walked out of the cave through the tunnel they came from. Xuandu nagged at Li Mu along the way. "Benefactor Li, with your wisdom, it's a pity that you don't cultivate Buddhism. Are you really not going to reconsider?" "Sorry, I'm not reconsidering. If you have any conditions, you can tell me. We can negotiate." "Can I not shave my head?" "Yes." "Can I not live in a temple?" "Of course you can." "Can I marry a wife?" "This? I really can't." Then there's nothing to discuss. No matter how eloquent Xuandu was, he still couldn't convince Li Mu. The moment they walked out of the tunnel and saw the light of day again, Xuandu sighed and said, "Everyone in the world is amused by lust. Benefactor Li, your wisdom is so profound. Can't you be an exception?" Li Mu said, "Master, you've misjudged me. I don't have any wisdom. I'm just a layman." Xuandu opened his mouth to say something, but Li Qing looked at him indifferently and said, "He doesn't want to become a monk. Master, please don't force him." Xuandu looked at Li Qing and then at Li Mu. As if he understood something, he sighed deeply and said, "In that case, I won't force you anymore." Li Mu breathed a sigh of relief. He was still a little afraid of Xuandu, who liked to use force when he couldn't reason with him. Xuandu didn't mention the matter of Li Mu becoming a monk anymore. He said, "I still have a request. I hope you can agree." After all, this monk had saved his life. Li Mu said, "As long as it's not about becoming a monk, everything can be discussed." Xuandu smiled and looked at Li Mu. He asked, "The scripture that you're cultivating shouldn't be that basic scripture, right?" Since he couldn't hide it anymore, Li Mu might as well confess. He simply said, "It was a snowy winter." An old monk. Li Qing glanced at Li Mu and didn't say anything. After a while, Xuandu shook his head and said, "I'm not coveting your scripture. It's just that I just saw the light of Buddha that was activated by the scripture and it was extraordinary. The abbot of Jinshan Temple was injured by a heretical cultivation several months ago and his cultivation foundation was destroyed. This light of Buddha contains a mysterious power that I can't see through. Perhaps it can help him repair his foundation and get rid of his old problems." Xuandu saved his life. Using this opportunity, Li Mu could repay the favor. Li Mu thought for a while and said, "Of course I can save him. But my mana is weak. I might disappoint you." Xuandu smiled and said, "When the time comes, you can borrow my mana. Even if it doesn't work, the Jinshan Temple will still owe you a favor." Li Mu nodded and said, "Then when I return to the county government, I'll pay a visit to the Jinshan Temple." Huiyuan scratched his bald head and said, This scripture is so powerful. That winter, benefactor Li must have met a Buddhist monk. Xuandu smiled and didn't say anything. On the day Li Mu stayed in the Jinshan temple, the Buddha statue in the temple glowed for no reason, indicating that a new scripture was coming out. That incident still troubled the monks in the temple. At this moment, Xuandu already had an answer in his heart. However, he didn't ask further, nor did he say much. He only looked at Li Mu with pity in his eyes. Li Mu stood at the entrance of the underground karst cave and looked around. He found that this place was very different from when they came in. The ground they were standing on was charred black. The surrounding trees were also emitting wisps of black smoke. It was as if a fierce battle had just taken place. The residual mana fluctuations and the chaotic spiritual qi of heaven and earth also proved this point. Li Mu looked around and saw a familiar figure under a tree. Wu Bo was lying under the tree. His body was full of bloody holes. His body had shrunk by at least half. His essence blood had been sucked dry, his physical strength was gone, and his primordial spirit was nowhere to be found. He was obviously like senior brother Qin, sucked dry by the zombie. Huiyuan murmured, "Is Constable Wu still alive?" Cultivators in the assembled God state needed to gather their 3 souls into a primordial spirit. After the primordial spirit was formed, as long as it was not destroyed, even if the body was destroyed, it could be reborn. Li Qing took out an immortal guiding talisman. Li Mu understood and took a few steps forward. He took a strand of hair from Wu Bo's body and wrapped it around the immortal guiding talisman. Then he threw the Fulu into the air. The immortal guiding talisman drawn by Li Qing's assembled God state cultivation could sense a wide range. As long as Wu Bo's primordial spirit was still there, it could trigger a reaction from the Fulu. The paper crane folded by the immortal guiding talisman flapped its wings and flew into the air. After circling in place, it fell straight down and landed on Wu Bo's body. In such a short time, Wu Bo's primordial spirit could not have escaped the detection range of the immortal guiding talisman. Fulu did not have any reaction, which meant that his primordial spirit had also dissipated. In other words, Wu Bo was dead. He was completely dead. His soul was scattered, and his body was dead. Chapter 99. Huiyuan looked at Wu Bo's corpse, put his palms together and said with pity, "If Constable Wu hadn't escaped, he wouldn't have ended up like this." Amit Ba. Xuandu made a Buddhist salute with one hand and said, "Every peck and every drink has its own destiny. He has no one to blame but himself." Wu Bo was dead, but Li Mu wasn't sad at all. Li Mu had no enmity with him, but he tried to kill Li Mu time and time again. Even if the zombie didn't kill him, Li Mu would find a chance to kill him sooner or later. He wasn't bloodthirsty, but he wouldn't show mercy to those who wanted his life. The flying stiff that had just evolved seemed to prefer the pure yang body and the earth elemental body. Otherwise, Li Mu would have been in big trouble just now. Xuandu closed his eyes and sensed. He looked in a certain direction and said, "That zombie fled to the west. I have to chase after him to prevent him from harming more people." Li Mu looked at his back and reminded, "This zombie has already evolved into the flying stiff. Master Xuandu, be careful." The flying stiff that had just evolved could rival the supernatural powers of Taoism and the golden body of Buddhism. Xuandu's realm was the golden body. He could easily crush shape-shifting monsters, but he might not be at an advantage against the flying stiff. Huiyuan smiled and said, "Benefactor Li, don't worry. Martial Uncle Xuandu has already attained the golden body for many years. He can deal with this flying stiff." Hearing Huiyuan's words, Li Mu was no longer worried about Xuandu. He looked at Li Qing and asked, "Boss, what do we do now?" Li Qing thought for a while and said, "Let's go back to Jianghu village first." When they came, there were 5 of them, but when they went back, there were only 3 left. This was something they had never expected before coming here. The zombie horde was destroyed, but the flying stiff managed to escape. Not only did they fail to collect courage, but they also lost 2 assembled divinity cultivators. It did not seem like they had one. When they returned to Jianghu village, Hanja greeted them from afar and asked, "Why are you guys back so soon? How was it?" Did you guys eliminate the zombie horde? Li Mu nodded and said, yes, a flying stiff escaped. The master Xuandu of the Jinshan temple has gone after it. Hanja looked around and asked, where are Wu Bo and senior brother Qin? Did they also go after the flying stiff? Li Mu, Wu Bo is dead. What? Hanja's eyes immediately widened. He said in disbelief, how could Wu Bo be dead? Who killed him? Li Mu said, that flying stiff. Wu Bo's death shocked Hanja, but it was only shock. Even though he and Wu Bo were both disciples of the Talisman sect, they didn't belong to the same faction, so there wasn't any friendship between them. Conversely, there was even some enmity between them, so he'd been unable to get used to Wu Bo's actions since a long time ago. Even so, the news of his death at the hands of the flying stiff still shocked Hanja for a long time. After a while, he accepted the reality and asked, where is senior brother Qin? Why didn't he come back? Li Mu could see that Hanja and senior brother Qin had a very good relationship. For a moment, he did not know how to answer. In the end, it was Huiyuan who sighed and said, senior brother Qin colluded with the zombie and lured us to die underground. Constable Wu almost died at his hands. Senior brother Qin later had his essence and primordial spirit sucked by the flying stiff and died in the underground karst cave. Impossible! Hanja's expression changed greatly. He grabbed Huiyuan's collar and said angrily, how could senior brother Qin do such a thing? What nonsense are you talking about? Amitba. Huiyuan chanted the name of Buddha and did not say anything. He silently lowered his head and let Hanja grab his collar. What he said is true. Li Qing looked at Hanja and said, senior brother Qin has long been reduced to a heretical cultivation. He lured cultivators underground to let the zombies suck their essence. Hanja's face was pale. He slowly released his grip on Huiyuan's collar and murmured, impossible, this is impossible. Senior brother Qin can't be that kind of person. He can't do such a thing. He shook his head and retreated. In the end, he disappeared from the sight of Li Mu and the others. Huiyuan took a step forward but was stopped by Li Mu. Li Mu sighed and said, let him be alone for a while. When Wu Bo was alive, he was hated by both humans and dogs. No one cared about his death. But senior brother Qin's death was a great blow to Hanja. For hours later, when Li Mu found him, he was sitting on the highest roof of the village. His eyes were red and swollen like peaches. Li Mu sat beside him and asked, are you crying? Hanja wiped his eyes and said through gritted teeth, no. Li Mu said, you're still denying it. Even your voice is hoarse. Hanja glared at him and asked, Li Mu, you are so annoying. Why do Miss Qing, Lady Lu, and that little girl all like you so much? Li Mu shrugged and said, maybe because I'm good-looking. Hanja turned his head and spat. But Li Mu looked indifferent. You can't change this fact even if you spit on me. Hanja looked at him and suddenly said with a look of realization, I know why they all like you. Why? Because you are shameless. Li Mu said indifferently, if a tree doesn't want its bark, it will die. If a person is shameless, he is invincible. Maybe girls like shameless people like me. Hanja said, I remember you were not like this before. Li Mu looked at him and said, people always change. Hanja lowered his head and said after a moment, yes, you will change, I will change, and senior brother Qin will also change. He used to be the most hardworking person in our branch. Why do you think he became a heretical cultivation? Li Mu shook his head and said, he said that no matter how hard he worked, he would still be overtaken by others. So he didn't want to work hard anymore. Old Wang once said to Li Mu that the path of cultivation was unfair. Some people had ordinary talent. Others could reach the realm in 1 year, but they needed to cultivate for 10 years or even decades. Some people had ordinary backgrounds. With the same talent, others had the support of their sect and elders. On the path of cultivation, they did not lack resources. 1 year of cultivation was still equivalent to 10 years or decades of cultivation for them. In this cruel reality, if one could not resist the temptation and made a mistake, they would become like senior brother Qin. For people like Li Qing and Hanja, who could endure loneliness and cultivate arduously, all of them had a tenacious heart. The degree of condensation of the mana they cultivated was also far from being comparable to those who achieved rapid heretical cultivation. Hanja raised his head and said, "Senior brother Qin has always been very good to me. He was like a brother to me, guiding me in my cultivation. When I was bullied by other brothers, he was also the one who stood up for me." Although senior brother Qin had been reduced to a heretical cultivation, Li Mu saw how well he treated Hanja. He led all of them to the underground karst cave and only left Hanja here because he did not want him to be involved. Hanja let out a long sigh and said, "Senior brother Qin's matter, I really don't know how to tell the other brothers." Li Mu patted his shoulder and said, "No one wanted this to happen. My condolences." "My condolences, it's easy to say." Hanja shook his head and said, "Senior brother Qin was my guide in cultivation. The first time I gathered qi, it was with the help of senior brother Qin that I succeeded. In this world, other than my parents and master, he is the person who treats me the best. You don't have a guide in cultivation, so you can't understand this feeling." Li Mu looked at him and said, "Who says I don't?" Hanja was stunned for a moment. As if he thought of something, his expression became even more bitter. Li Mu looked at him and asked, "Why don't you ask who my guide is?" "I don't know, and I don't want to know." Hanja's bitter face showed an angry expression and said, "Go away, I don't want to see you again." Li Mu smiled and said, "The one who guided me on the path of cultivation is my family's leader." "Did I ask you?" Hanja angrily said, "Get out of here, right now." Chapter 100. After Li Mu's consolation, Hanja looked much better. Li Mu, on the other hand, was in low spirits. Wu Bo and senior brother Qin had taught Li Mu a good lesson during this operation. Zombies were scary, but what was even scarier than zombies was the complicated human heart. The outside world was too complicated. After leaving home for 3 days, Li Mu began to miss Lu Hanyan, Wan Wan, Zhang Shan, Li Si, and Old Wang. Hanja had already calmed down. He jumped down from the roof and said, "I'm going back to the sect to bring back the news of senior brother Qin and Wu Bo. I'll leave this place to you." Apart from the flying stiff that had escaped, all the zombies in the underground cave had been eliminated by Li Mu and the others. Clear River Village was no longer in any danger. With a few cultivators stationed, it was enough to deal with all kinds of situations. Xuandu only returned to Clear River Village when it was close to evening. He looked a little tired. He shook his head and said, "The flying stiff ran too fast. I couldn't catch up to it." The flying stiff was called a flying stiff because it could fly in the sky and burrow into the ground. Its strength was not on the same level as a jumping stiff. Buddhist or Taoist fourth realm cultivators might have the strength to kill it, but it would be extremely difficult to catch it. Li Mu sighed. The courage that was in his hands had flown away just like that. The courage of the nearby walking corpses and jumping zombies had all been absorbed by the zombie king for evolution. If Li Mu wanted to collect the courage, he could only go deeper. But that would also increase the risk. Li Mu's face showed a thoughtful expression. He was hesitating whether he should take this risk. Xuandu looked at him and suddenly asked, "Young benefactor, do you want to take the zombie soul for your own cultivation?" Li Mu nodded and did not deny it. "Over the past few days, apart from the zombies, I've also collected quite a lot of courage. I originally wanted to train my body, but I think you need it more. I'll give it to you." Xuandu took out a jade stone from his bosom and said, "Is this enough?" "How could I?" Li Mu hurriedly took the jade from Xuandu's hands. After examining it, he found that the jade contained a lot of courage, which should be enough for him to refine the anger. There should still be a lot left. He smiled and said, "It's enough, it's enough. Thank you, Master Xuandu." Xuandu smiled and said, "There's no need to thank me. After all, this penniless monk has a favor to ask of you." Hanja had returned to White Cloud Mountain's ancestral court. Li Mu had also obtained the boldness he needed from Xuandu. After discussing with Li Qing, she decided to let Li Mu return to the county office first and report Wu Bo's matter. After all, Wu Bo was still a constable of the Yangqiu County government in name. His background in Fulu School was not weak. If he died in an accident here, the Yamen would probably have to give an explanation to the Fulu School. Li Mu could not help much here. His biggest goal had been achieved, so there was no need to stay in Zhou County. Xuandu put his palms together and said, "This penniless monk will stay here for a few more days. After returning to Yangqiu County, I'll go to the county office to invite you, young benefactor." After the zombies in the underground karst cave were wiped out, Qinghe village welcomed a peaceful night. Not a single zombie came to invade. The next morning, Li Mu bid farewell to Li Qing and Huiyuan. He used the spirit travel talisman to travel for several hours. When it was almost dark in the afternoon, he finally arrived at the county office. After hearing Li Mu's words, Jianghu County magistrates jumped up from his chair in shock. He said in disbelief, "What? You said Wu Bo is dead?" Li Mu nodded and said, "Constable Wu died in the hands of a flying stiff." "That shouldn't be." Jianghu County magistrates frowned and said, "Although Wu Bo is annoying, he has the strength. How could he die so easily?" In fact, Li Mu had the same feeling. Although he didn't like Wu Bo, he had to admit that Wu Bo was very strong. Although he was in the spirit-gathering realm, it would be difficult for a theurgy cultivator to gain an advantage against him. Even when senior brother Qin ambushed him from behind and crushed his heart, he was still able to survive. As a core disciple of Fulu School and a grandfather in the manifestation realm, he must have had many life-saving tricks up his sleeve. His death was indeed a little careless. Either Wu Bo was strong in appearance but weak in reality, he was an idiot, or the flying stiff was too strong. But no matter what, the fact that Wu Bo was dead couldn't be changed. Jianghu County magistrates sighed and muttered, "This is troublesome. If he dies at this time, how will I explain it to Fulu School?" Li Mu asked, "Sir, are you afraid that Fulu School will make things difficult for the county office?" "Afraid? When have I ever been afraid of anyone?" Jianghu County magistrates snorted coldly and said, "Behind my county is the great Zhou Court. Why would I be afraid of Fulu School?" He coughed softly and said, "But I've been busy with official business recently. I don't have time to deal with them. If someone from Fulu School comes, just say I'm not here." Although Fulu School and Great Zhou Court cooperated a lot, they weren't very close. The court didn't like Fulu School's independence and lack of control. Fulu School was dissatisfied that the court didn't cooperate with them in recruiting disciples. While they cooperated, there was also hostility between them. This could be seen from the zombie disaster in Zhou County. If Fulu School wholeheartedly wanted to help the court, they only needed to send a good fortune realm or Dongxian cultivator. One person would be enough to solve the crisis in Zhou County. They wouldn't just send out these Jinshin and remarkable ability disciples, which would cause the disaster in Zhou County to continue unquenchable. Li Mu walked out of the front office. Zhang Shan was waiting outside. He couldn't wait and asked, "Is Fei Bo really dead?" Li Mu nodded and said, "He was bitten by a zombie. He's completely dead. I personally burned his body." Zhang Shan's eyes widened and he muttered, "I told you that evil would be repaid with evil." Old Wang didn't believe me. Li Mu still had some questions he wanted to ask Old Wang. He asked, "Where's Old Wang? I didn't see him in the guard room." Zhang Shan said, "Old Wang asked for leave. He just left this morning." Li Mu was stunned for a moment. He asked, "Leave? Where did—" He said he was going out to visit relatives. Zhang Shan sighed and said regretfully, "Old Wang actually has relatives. Do you think he'll leave his money to his relatives after he dies?" Old Wang wasn't in the county office. He didn't know when he would come back. Li Mu suppressed the questions in his heart and went home first. Last night, he refined the fear in his body and successfully condensed the fourth spirit. After getting rid of the Taoist priest's death curse, Li Mu felt unprecedentedly relaxed. Without the seven spirits, the physical body would deteriorate rapidly. Now that Li Mu had condensed the fourth spirit, the speed of his physical body's deterioration was far slower than the speed of his cultivation. It was like pouring water into a pool and releasing water at the same time. Before condensing the fourth spirit, The speed of pouring water couldn't catch up with the speed of releasing water. After condensing the fourth spirit, it would be reversed. As for the remaining 3 spirits, there was no rush to condense them. Li Mu could first condense his soul and find a chance to do so in the future. Refining the soul and condensing the soul were both cultivation realms and cultivation methods. Refining the soul before condensing the soul, or condensing the soul before refining the soul. There were some unorthodox cultivators who didn't refine the soul, condense the soul, or condense the spirit, and only relied on qi cultivation to reach the middle 3 realms. However, such people were rare. After all, the cultivation methods of Taoism were easy to obtain. Refining the spirit first, then condensing the soul, and finally condensing the spirit was the most scientific cultivation method. It could increase the cultivator's strength to the greatest extent. If one had mana but not condensed the primordial spirit, the soul would be weak. Once the physical body was destroyed, there was no other way but to become a ghost cultivator. After condensing the spirit last night, there was still a small amount of spirit left in the jade stone that Xuandu gave him. It was enough for Wanwan and Lu Hanyan to refine 1 spirit each. When Li Mu was about to reach the door, he saw Wanwan sitting on the steps of the door. She rested her chin on one hand and looked at the people on the street in boredom. Li Mu walked to her side and sat down. He asked, "What are you thinking about?" "Young master." Wanwan's body trembled and she jumped up. She said in surprise, "Young master, you're back. Miss has been worried sick about you these past few days." Hurried footsteps came from the courtyard. When they reached the door, they slowed down. Lu Hanyan pushed the door open and walked out. She said, "I wasn't worried about him. I was just afraid that if he was bitten by a zombie, you wouldn't have a place to eat in the future." Lu Hanyan's voice was filled with resentment. It was unclear whether she was still angry about the last time or angry that Li Mu left without saying goodbye. Li Mu rubbed his stomach and changed the topic. He said, "Is there anything to eat?" "After a day of traveling, I'm starving." Lu Hanyan glared at him and said, "Go change your clothes and wash your hands." "I just cooked noodles." Lu Hanyan's noodles were also very delicious. Li Mu ate 3 bowls in one breath. She glanced at Li Mu and asked, "When did you become like Wanwan?" Li Mu drank all the soup in his bowl and wiped his mouth. He took out a piece of jade and handed it to Lu Hanyan. Lu Hanyan reached out and took it. She rolled her eyes at him and said, "Don't think that I can forgive you just because you gave me a piece of jade. If you leave without saying goodbye again next time, I'll pretend that I don't have you as a friend." Li Mu explained, "This is not an ordinary jade. Didn't you think that your cultivation speed was too slow? The power in this jade can help you and Wanwan refine your soul." Lu Hanyan was stunned. She asked, "This is why you went to Zhou County?" Li Mu nodded and said, "However, when it comes to cultivation, it's best to be down to earth. Don't always think about shortcuts. There's a huge difference between the mana that comes from hard work and the mana that comes from trickery. It's also a great training for one's temperament." Even though Li Mu believed in Lu Hanyan, he still told her about senior brother Qin's example. It was Li Mu who guided her on the path of cultivation. He had the responsibility to remind her not to go astray. Lu Hanyan said, "Don't worry. Even if I have to take a shortcut, I won't take this kind of shortcut." Li Mu said, "Other than this, there are no shortcuts to cultivation. Of course, you're different. You have other shortcuts." Lu Hanyan's eyes lit up. She asked, "What shortcuts?" Chapter 101. Since he was already familiar with Lu Hanyan, Li Mu told her the truth. "You have a pure yin body. There's no better shortcut than finding a pure yang body for dual cultivation." Lu Hanyan spat. "Bah, you wish." "I didn't say it was me." Li Mu looked at her and comforted her. "Don't worry. Didn't I tell you that you're not my type?" Lu Hanyan took a deep breath and forced herself to keep smiling. She asked, "Is a Resterly your type?" "Not really." Li Mu thought for a while and said, "If a woman has the boss's strength, Wanwan's personality, and your money." Lu Hanyan snorted. "Dream on." After eating 3 bowls of noodles in a row, Li Mu felt a little thirsty. He asked Lu Hanyan, "Is there any tea?" Lu Hanyan put away the bowls and chopsticks and said coldly, "Do you want some water from the pot?" Lu Hanyan was really a woman who liked to get angry. Unfortunately, she had already refined the second soul, so her anger didn't show on the outside. Li Mu couldn't absorb it anymore. All the cultivators in the county government had gone to Zhou County. Old Wang had also gone out to visit his relatives. The county government was seriously understaffed. Li Mu was temporarily transferred to the household office to take over Old Wang's work. In fact, Old Wang's clerical work was the busiest in the county government. Zhang Shan and Li Si had finished patrolling. They were either sleeping in the guard room or in the brothel. Old Wang's work, however, was not as easy. Li Mu had been sorting out the past case files, managing the household registration files, and coordinating the cases reported to the county government. He was so busy during the day that he didn't even have time to read books. "I think it's good to be a clerk." Lu Hanyan and Li Mu had different ideas. After dinner, they sat in the yard, fanning themselves with a small fan, and said, "You don't have to patrol, kill zombies, or catch monsters. You just have to sit in the guard room every day. After 2 years, you can get a wife. Isn't that good?" Li Mu was reading a book and casually said, "That will have to wait until I get a wife first." What Lu Hanyan said actually made a lot of sense. Ordinary people just wanted to live a stable life. Old Wang had been in this position all his life. Although he had not stepped into the path of cultivation, he had lived longer than Wu Bo and senior brother Qin combined. Lu Hanyan probed, "What do you think of our Wan Wan?" Li Mu flipped through the pages and asked without raising his eyelids, "What do you mean?" Lu Hanyan said, "Wan Wan is 16 this year. In 2 years she will be 18. She will be at the age of marriage. At that time, I will marry Wan Wan to you. What do you think?" Li Mu put down the book and asked doubtfully, "What about you?" Lu Hanyan glared at him and said, "What are you dreaming about?" Li Mu explained, "I mean, if Wan Wan gets married, you will have no one to serve you, right? I can live well alone. "I don't need anyone to serve me," Lu Hanyan said. "Besides, Wan Wan is my sister. I have never treated her as a maid." She looked at Li Mu and said, "Don't change the subject. What do you think of Wan Wan?" Li Mu opened the book again and said, "She's very good." Although the little girl was a little fierce and dull, she was well-behaved and obedient. She looked a little childish now, but a girl would change 18 times between childhood and womanhood. Who knew what she would grow up to be in 2 years? Lu Hanyan asked, "Do you mean that you agree to marry Wan Wan?" Although Wan Wan was gentle and well-behaved, Li Mu had always treated her as a younger sister and had never had any thoughts in that regard. Instead, he often compared Lu Hanyan and Li Qing together. It was just a comparison. In the past few months, he had been thinking about how to live and had never really considered this matter. He was not Li Si. He was not so careless that he only had a few months to live at most. He still had the leisure to fall in love. Li Mu shook his head and said, "I just want to cultivate for the time being. I haven't thought about these things." Lu Hanyan said, "The past is the past. Now that you have condensed the 4 spirits, you can think about it. Life is not only about cultivation. Haven't you thought about the future?" "The future?" Li Mu thought for a moment and said, "In the future, I want to make a lot of money and buy a big house. And then? Hire some maids and servants and experience the feeling of being served by others. And then? And marry a few beautiful wives." Li Mu sometimes wondered if God felt that he had suffered too much in his previous life, so he was given another life to make up for it. If that was really the case, then he must think about some things that he had not dared to think about before. If conditions permitted, he wanted to marry a woman with a high cultivation, a gentle woman, and a rich woman. When he was bored, the family could gather together to play mahjong to pass the time and help him fulfill his love and lust. Wouldn't that be perfect? Lu Hanyan scoffed at Li Mu's dream. She said, "Amen." Then she floated away. After the Fulu school intervened, the situation in Zhou County reversed. The people of Yangqiu County no longer panicked. The shops on the street reopened. Because of the people's vengeful spending, business was even better than before. She had endless work to do. Every day, news about Zhou County would gather at the county office. Han Zhe sent a letter saying that after learning about Wu Bo's death, the elder Wu of the 7th branch was furious. He went down the mountain in person and led many cultivators of the 7th branch to search the entire Zhou County. Under the fury of the Master of Creation realm, the zombie disaster in Zhou County ended almost without any suspense. White zombies, black zombies, jumping zombies, and even new corpses that were still in the graves and had just been condensed by the corpse chi were dug out and burned. After this incident, there would probably not be any more zombies in Zhou County for a long time. At that moment, Elder Wu was chasing after the flying stiff that killed Wu Bo. The other 2 flying stiff in Zhou County had died in his hands 3 days ago. The group of zombies had no leader, so they were easily eliminated by other cultivators. From another perspective, Wu Bo's death was not completely meaningless. At the very least, the people of Zhou County benefited from his death. If not for Wu Bo's death, the Fulu school would not have sent a Master of Creation realm. The zombie disaster in Zhou County had temporarily come to an end. Li Mu was writing a notice and asked Zhang Shan and Li Si to post it at the entrance of the street. The notice was written by Jianghu County magistrates. The content was to advise the people that if there was a funeral in their family, they must report it to the government. After the government checked the grave, they would bury the dead. It was forbidden to bury the dead casually, and violators would be severely punished. After all, the landlord Zhang of Zhang village had buried his father in a corpse breeding ground and lost his life in vain. After that, the zombie tide in Zhou County overflowed, and thousands of people died. It caused great panic in the counties of the North County. All of this was a warning to Jianghu County magistrates. The location of the mass grave outside the city was very particular. The terrain there was special, so it would not accumulate a trace of murderous aura. The possibility of the corpses buried there was zero. Some poor people who could not afford a feng shui master would choose to bury their dead there. But if they did not understand feng shui and coincidentally buried their loved ones in a place where they should not be buried, the consequences would be unimaginable. Landlord Zhang was a good example. Li Mu took out a notice and wrote 2 lines on it to warn the people. There are thousands of tombs, but safety is the most important. If the funeral is not standard, the family will cry. Old Wang was not in the government office. His room on duty temporarily belonged to Li Mu. Li Mu found a book on feng shui tombs from the bookshelf and studied it seriously. Qi will scatter when it is carried by the wind, and the water will stop when it is carried by the boundary. The ancients gathered the qi and did not scatter, and when it was carried out, it stopped. This is why feng shui is called feng shui. In feng shui, obtaining the water is the best, and hiding the wind is second. 10 taboos of tombs. First, do not come from the back. Second, do not open the front. Third, do not bow in the direction of the water. Fourth, do not sweep the cave. Fifth, do not let the dragon and tiger go straight. 8 dragons direction formula. Touch the acupoint and stand in the direction must be connected. The 8 dragons must be separated clearly. The fire dragon must not be created. The water restrains it. The wood will help the fire dragon rise. When the people moved or buried their graves, they had to report to the government office. Although it could reduce the safety risks, the government office's workload was also increased. Moreover, there had to be professionals who understood feng shui and tombs. This was also a very deep knowledge. In the government office, other than Old Wang, it seemed that only Han Zhe had dabbled in it. Li Mu memorized these rules and taboos. Perhaps they would be useful in the future. He looked for a while and heard a slight noise outside the duty room. At the same time, he also sensed a few familiar auras. Li Mu walked out of the duty room and saw Li Qing, Han Zhe, and Hui Yuan standing in the courtyard. Chapter 102. Li Mu walked into the courtyard and said with a smile, "Boss, you're back?" Han Zhe looked at Li Mu and asked, "Can't you see us?" Hui Yuan chanted the name of Buddha and sighed, "It's a pity that Constable Wu won't be able to come back." Han Zhe snorted coldly, "What's there to pity about him? He framed his colleagues and betrayed them. This kind of scum deserves to die. Thank you for your hard work. Constable Zhou came out of the room and shook his head. Good has its rewards, and evil has its consequences. Constable Wu is dead, so let's not talk about him anymore. Li Mu asked Huiyuan, how's the situation in Zhou County? A smile appeared on the little monk's face as he said, the zombies and evil creatures in Zhou County have all been wiped out. The people who gathered there have also begun to return to their original villages. The disaster this time has been quelled. Li Mu asked again, has the flying stiff been caught? Li Qing shook her head and said, Elder Wu has been looking for it. It had been more than 10 days since the incident. It was impossible for a blessed realm expert to not be able to deal with a small flying stiff. Li Mu was puzzled and asked, is that zombie so powerful? Li Qing explained, if it was a head-on fight, of course it wouldn't be Elder Wu's match. But the flying stiff's speed is even faster than Imperial Qi. It won't be easy for a blessed realm expert to catch it. As for the remaining flying stiff, the county governor and the experts from Fulu School would take care of it. Li Mu didn't want to think about it anymore. He smiled and said, don't worry about it. It's good that you guys came back safely. Li Qing seemed to be deep in thought, as if she had something on her mind. Li Mu asked, boss, is there anything else? Li Qing said, I keep having the feeling that something is not quite right. Li Mu was stunned and asked, what's wrong? I don't know. Li Qing shook her head and said, maybe I'm thinking too much. Actually, Li Mu also felt that something was off. From the very beginning, the flying stiff hadn't paid much attention to Li Mu and the others. Instead, it had chased after Wu Bo relentlessly. Wu Bo had tried to escape twice. The first time, he had been chased back, and the second time, he had directly received a bento box. Moreover, after killing Wu Bo, the flying stiff chose to escape instead of returning to the cave to continue the slaughter. It didn't make sense. The latter could be explained by the flying stiff's fear of Xuandu, but the former. It didn't make sense for it to ignore Li Mu, who possessed a pure yang body. Instead, it cared so much about the earth elemental body. Could it be that the earth elemental body had some special attraction to it? The cultivation world didn't have any explanation for this for the time being. However, just like how they didn't know that glutinous rice had a restraining effect on zombies, there were still many things that humans didn't know about in the boundless universe. Perhaps Li Mu had unintentionally discovered another law of nature. It was a pity that old Wang wasn't here. Otherwise, Li Mu could have discussed this issue with him in depth. Li Mu sighed softly. It was also a pity that the flying stiff's courage was missing. If he could obtain the flying stiff's courage, it should be enough to support him until he reached the soul-condensing realm. North County. Yu County. Yu County was the easternmost county in North County. It was separated from Zhou County by several counties. Therefore, the zombie disaster in Zhou County didn't have much of an impact on Yu County. Up until now, there hadn't been a single case of a zombie harming anyone in Yu County. In a remote village in Yu County, a white-bearded old man in a Taoist robe took out a fulu from his pocket. He smiled at a few village women and said, use my talisman, and I guarantee that you'll be able to give birth to a fat boy in the future. How about it? A talisman only costs 2 copper coins. You won't lose out if you buy it with 2 copper coins. You won't be fooled with 2 copper coins. This Taoist priest was dressed very sloppily. Not only was his Taoist robe full of dirt, but there were also a few holes. He looked like a swindler. However, the few village women at the entrance of the village didn't doubt his words at all. There was no other reason. At the beginning, they also thought that this person was a swindler. However, when he revealed his miraculous ability to create words on a piece of paper, they immediately stopped doubting his words. Moreover, 2 copper coins wasn't much. If they were cheated, so be it. However, if what he said was true, wouldn't they have profited greatly? If they could give birth to a fat boy, they would be able to walk in the village with their heads held high. The old man in the Taoist robe distributed the fulu to the crowd and happily put away a few copper coins. He then looked at a woman and said, young lady, it's best if you don't go out for the next 2 days. From your looks, you'll be in for a bloody disaster in the next few days. Ba ba ba. You jinx. The woman, who was standing by the side to watch the fun and didn't buy his talismans, spat and scolded him. She then prepared to go back to cook. However, after taking 2 steps, she suddenly twisted her foot and fell to the ground. Her palms were rubbed against the sand on the ground, leaving bloody marks. "Ah, you're so accurate. I'll buy one too, I'll buy one too. Leave one for me. I'll go home and withdraw money." Seeing this scene, the new wives who had been watching from the side immediately believed him. They all bought the fulu from the Taoist priest. After a while, the Taoist priest sold another stack of talismans. They were exorcism talismans, ghost exorcism talismans, embryo protection talismans, big fat boy talismans, and so on. The Taoist priest was counting the copper coins happily. Suddenly, he raised his head and looked at the sky. A black shadow was flying across the sky. "Why is there a flying stiff here?" The Taoist priest was puzzled. He pinched his fingers and calculated. The puzzlement on his face turned into surprise. He said in surprise, "Why can't I see it?" Not long after, another figure flew over and landed at the entrance of the village. It was an old man. He didn't have many wrinkles on his face and had a head of black and white hair. When the woman at the entrance of the village saw him, she immediately exclaimed, "Immortal Master!" The North County was where the ancestral court of Fulu School was located. When the people saw an immortal master descending from the sky, they wouldn't be too surprised. After the old man landed, he waved his sleeves. In the void in front of him, a still light appeared. In the light was a middle-aged man with a pale face. He looked at the crowd and asked, "Have you seen this person before?" Everyone shook their heads. The old man waved his hand again, and the light in the air disappeared. He looked at the sloppy Taoist priest indifferently and said to the village women, "Fulu is a way to communicate with gods and ghosts. Don't use it without permission and don't believe the words of a swindler." "What? A swindler? The talisman that gave birth to my son is fake?" "Swindler, refund." The old Taoist who descended from the sky had the demeanor of a transcendent being. His Taoist robe fluttered in the wind. Clearly, he looked more like an immortal than the sloppy old Taoist. The moment he spoke, the woman who had just bought the talisman immediately believed him. She grabbed the sloppy old Taoist collar and clamored for a refund. The sloppy Taoist priest was anxious. He pointed at the old man and said unhappily, "We're all in the same business. Why do you have to do this?" The old man glanced at him and ignored him. He rose into the air again and wanted to leave, but the old man grabbed his ankle. "Come down. So what if you're in the Fulu school? So what if you're in the creation realm?" The sloppy Taoist priest grabbed his ankle and said angrily, "I'm telling you, if you don't make it clear today, don't think about leaving." The old man didn't expect that he would be pulled down by the Taoist priest. Moreover, the other party could tell his cultivation realm, but he couldn't see through the Taoist priest at all. This meant that the other party's cultivation was above his. He looked frightened and took a fulu from a woman. After holding it, he found that the spiritual qi in the fulu didn't dissipate. It was not an ordinary talisman. He immediately bowed to the Taoist priest and said, "I didn't see it clearly. Please don't blame me." The Taoist priest snorted and said, "Say it again." "Is my talisman fake?" The old man's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He quickly said, "It's real, it's real." Seeing that the women who were talking and laughing with him just now were looking at him with fear, the Taoist priest looked at the old man with dissatisfaction and muttered, "Meddling in other people's business?" He put his hand on the old man's shoulder and the 2 figures disappeared, leaving only the shocked villagers. Several miles away from the village, the 2 figures appeared again. With this move, they could move several miles away. The elder Wu's face was pale. He looked at the sloppy Taoist priest with even more respect. The sloppy Taoist priest asked, "Are you chasing that flying stiff?" The elder Wu quickly said, "It killed countless people in Zhou County. My grandson was also killed by it. If this monster is not eliminated, the North County will not be peaceful." The sloppy Taoist priest looked at him and said, "Forget it. The former headmaster of the Fulu school has done me a favor. Today, I will help you count it." He counted with his fingers. After a while, he shook his head and said, "If you continue to chase it, your grandson won't be the only one who will die in its hands." Seeing the Taoist priest counting with his fingers, the elder Wu knew that he must be a Dongxian. Dongxian meant to have insight into the mysteries of the world. Dongxian cultivators could observe the stars, know the time, predict the future, and seek good luck and avoid evil. Since he said so, it meant that if he continued to chase it, he would be in danger. The elder Wu said in disbelief, "That flying stiff has just evolved." The sloppy Taoist priest did not say much. He waved his sleeve and a light screen appeared in the void. Compared to the light screen of elder Wu, this light screen was clearer. It was not static but dynamic. In the light screen, there was a dense forest. A figure slowly walked in the dense forest filled with fog. It was the flying stiff. The flying stiff, who was walking, suddenly raised its head. Its gaze seemed to be able to see through the light screen and saw the sloppy Taoist priest and the elder Wu. The next moment, the light screen shattered into countless pieces. "It broke your mystic light technique." The elder Wu's expression changed greatly. He said in a trembling voice, "How could this be?" The sloppy Taoist priest's gaze was deep. He said, "Even I can't calculate its origin. If you want to get rid of it, you'd better ask your peak masters to come." Chapter 103. The incident in Zhou County had ended, and Wu Bo had died at the hands of the flying stiff. Li Mu finally had some free time. Over the past few months, the cases in Jianghu County had come one after another. It was rare for him to have so much free time. Since there was nothing to do, Li Mu could calm down and think about his own cultivation. In ancient times, humans began to cultivate. The birth of Taoism was less than 1,000 years ago. Before Taoism, there were many different kinds of cultivation methods. Today, there were many cultivation methods other than Buddhism. However, Taoism's supernatural powers were mysterious and unpredictable. It was recognized by the cultivation world. As time passed, other cultivation methods were gradually eliminated or became a minority. The foundation of Taoism's cultivation was to control one's own body. That was why there were soul refining and soul consolidating. The order of soul refining and soul consolidating could be reversed. It was even possible to skip soul refining and go straight to soul consolidating. Refining one's soul was to better control one's body. During the process of refining one's soul, one's mana would also increase by 7 leaps, which was equivalent to a month or even several months of guiding and refining qi. As a result, very few cultivators would skip this step. However, Li Mu and Lu Hanyan were different. They already had souls in their bodies. They could just refine them directly. Li Mu's soul had been scattered and needed to be reunited. The first 4 souls were already difficult to reunite. The last 3 souls had to be born from evil, love, and lust. It was much more difficult than normal people's soul refining. The last 3 souls needed long-term planning. Li Mu could choose to reunite his soul first. When the time was right, he could make up for the 3 souls. However, if he did that, his cultivation path would always be flawed before he could fully refine the 7 souls. His mana would not be as strong as those who had refined the 7 souls. However, this was something that could not be helped. After careful consideration, Li Mu decided to proceed with the last part of his cultivation. Soul consolidating was similar to soul refining. It was a process of refining one's 3 souls. When all 3 souls were refined, one could try to fuse them into a primordial spirit and break through to the assembled spirit state. Li Mu flipped open the Taoist book in his hands. On the second page was the method and incantation to condense the soul. The 3rd day of the month, the 13th day of the month, and the evening of the 23rd day of the month. It's at this time, the 3 souls are uncertain, the spirit is floating, the light of the fetus is released, and the spirit is disturbed. Supreme profound palace, deep yellow, beginning green, inner refinement of the 3 souls, tranquil fetal light, divine treasure jade room, born with me, do not act rashly. The best time to refine the 7 spirits was at the beginning of the moon, the end of the moon, and the end of the moon. The best time to refine the 3 spirits was at the 3rd, 13th, and 23rd evening of the month. Today was the 5th, so he had missed the best time to condense his soul. He had to wait for another 7 days. Li Mu searched old Wang's bookshelf to see if there was any way for him to quickly collect love and lust. He didn't expect that he actually found it. According to an obscure Taoist book, some cultivators felt that the process of refining the 3 spirits was too slow and would choose to directly disperse them. After that, they would enter the secular world and specifically seduce ignorant girls. After cheating them of their feelings and bodies for a short period of time, they would heartlessly abandon them, making these girls hate them. This way, they would be able to collect love, lust, and hatred at the same time, condensing the final 3 spirits in one go. Li Mu shook his head and sighed, "This is too much of a scumbag." Although doing this didn't harm people or seek wealth, who knew how many innocent girls' feelings it would play with? Li Mu's conscience didn't allow him to do this. But if he didn't do this, there would only be one way to obtain love and lust. Could this be a hint from the heavens to him, a hint for him to marry a few more wives? Li Mu sat in the duty room thinking about this problem. 2 bald heads appeared at the door of the duty room. The little bald head was Huiyuan, and the big bald head was Xuandu. Li Mu remembered that he had promised Xuandu to treat the abbot of the Jinshan temple. He stood up and said, "Master Xuandu can just send a little monk to inform me. There's no need to come in person?" Xuandu smiled and asked, "Young benefactor, do you have time to go to the Jinshan temple now?" Li Mu nodded and said, "I'll go and inform the boss." Li Mu went to the duty room to inform Li Qing that he was going to the Jinshan temple. He found that she was not in the yamen, so he had to inform Constable Zhou and ask Huiyuan to accompany him up the mountain. Huiyuan called Xuandu Shishu, but he was not a monk of the Jinshan temple. There were 6 Taoist sects and 4 Buddhist sections. To be precise, whether it was the 6 Taoist sects or the 4 Buddhist sects, they were not a sect, but a faction. Fulu school was good at Fulu. In addition to the ancestral court, there were countless Taoist temples, all of which were branches of Fulu school. The difference between the 4 Buddhist sects was that they cultivated different scriptures. The doctrines of each sect were not very different, but the scriptures they believed in were different. Their cultivation habits were also very different. The Mind sect believed that everything was like a dream or an illusion. Everything was empty. Cultivators needed to forget their desires and surpass themselves. The Nirvana sect believed in nirvana, which talked about life and death and understanding one's nature. The Suffering sect and the Yen sect, one advocated asceticism and was strict with oneself. The other was detached from the world and did not teach others. Their influence was far less than the first 2 sections. The ancestral court of the Heart sect belonged to the Heart sect. The Jinshan temple also belonged to the Heart sect. They cultivated the same scriptures. Everyone who worshipped this scripture as a classic was a branch of the Heart sect. The Jinshan temple and the ancestral court of the Heart sect were of the same origin. Huiyuan and Xuandu were naturally closer. This was Li Mu's 2nd time coming to the Jinshan temple. However, the last time he came was at night. This time, it was daytime. The Jinshan temple was very famous in the area. This fame was mainly due to Xuandu. Wherever there were demons and ghosts that harmed people, he would be there. After his physical conversion, there were now more demons and ghosts in the Jinshan temple than people. Since they had entered the temple, they naturally had to enter the hall to pay their respects. Li Mu followed behind Xuandu and met many pilgrims along the way. There were many men and women who were sincerely chanting scriptures on the prayer mats in the hall. Only a few of the prayer mats were empty. Li Mu stood in the hall and looked at the chanting crowd. He felt a sense of familiarity. When he thought of where this sense of familiarity came from, he closed his eyes and silently felt it. He found that a trace of merit power was spreading out from these pilgrims and entering the body of the Buddha statue. Huiyuan said that by doing charity, repairing temples, creating statues, freeing people, and saving people from suffering, one could obtain merit. According to Li Mu's previous understanding, merit was doing good deeds. Now, it seemed that merit was a kind of power that originated from the human heart. These Buddha statues just stood there quietly, and the people would contribute the power of merit. Walking out of the hall, Xuandu chanted the name of Buddha and asked, "Benefactor Li, are you curious about merit?" Li Mu nodded and said, "This power is quite magical. I don't know what's so mysterious about it." Xuandu smiled and said, "This power is called merit by Buddhism and psyche power by Haotian Taoism. The imperial court regards it as national luck. It can help cultivators cultivate and also help the country gather national luck. It is the power of faith and the power of people." Li Mu understood the general idea. Whether it was Haotian Taoism, Buddhism, or a country, if they wanted to continue to grow, it was inevitable that they had to unite the hearts of people. Those who won the hearts of the people would win the world. If a temple had no pilgrims, it would naturally decline. A country without the hearts of the people would not be far from collapse. Li Mu pondered the meaning of Xuandu's words. He followed him through several corridors and came to a wing room. A young novice monk said, "Uncle Xuandu, the abbot just took a rest." Xuandu looked at Li Mu and said apologetically, "I may have to trouble Benefactor Li to wait for a while." "It's okay." Li Mu waved his hand to show that he did not mind. He asked again, "What level has the abbot reached?" Xuandu said, "Uncle Abbot reached the Golden Body Dharma Laksana more than 10 years ago." Dharma Laksana? Li Mu was shocked. 4th grade Golden Body Dharma Laksana and 5th grade Dharma Laksana. In the Dharma Laksana realm, one's physical body had been cultivated to an extremely powerful level. He could fight against cultivators in the creation realm. This was something that Li Mu did not even dare to think about. What kind of person could injure such a high Buddhist monk? Xuandu said, "The one who injured Uncle Abbot was a heretical cultivation in the Dongxian realm. However, the heretical cultivation was also surrounded and killed by orthodox cultivators. His soul was scattered." The person with the highest level of cultivation that Li Mu had ever seen was Xuandu. Dongxian was already at the peak of the middle 3 realms. His Taoist skills were mysterious. One more step and he would be in the upper 3 realms. He was a true immortal. The heretical cultivation in the Dongxian realm, who knew how many people he had killed on his path of cultivation. It was terrifying just thinking about it. The two of them did not talk for long before a young monk came over and said, "Uncle Xuandu, the abbot is awake." Chapter 104. The last time he came to the Jinshan temple, Li Mu met the abbot once. The old monk had white hair and a white beard. He had a benevolent face, but his body was a little thin. He sat cross-legged on a futon in the meditation room. His body looked weak, but his eyes were bright, as if they could see through people's hearts. Xuandu stepped forward and introduced, "Martial uncle, this is young benefactor Li Mu." Li Mu put his hands together and said, "Greetings, Master Abbot." "Young benefactor, you don't have to be so polite." The abbot smiled kindly and said, "My old bones will have to trouble you. I owe Master Xiandu a debt of gratitude. This is what I should do." Li Mu said politely. Without further ado, he said, "Let's start now." On the futon, the abbot sat cross-legged with his back facing Li Mu. Li Mu stood in front of the bed, reached out his right hand and pressed it against the abbot's back. He closed his eyes and used the Heart Sutra to silence himself. A golden light gradually appeared in his hand. With Li Mu's chanting, the golden light continuously flowed into the abbot's body. After a while, as Li Mu's mana was exhausted, the golden light in his hand gradually dimmed. At this time, Xuandu reached out and placed his hand on Li Mu's shoulder. Li Mu felt a pure Buddhist mana surge into his body from his shoulder, rushing into his limbs and bones. This mana was calm and stable, allowing Li Mu to mobilize it. The dim golden light in Li Mu's hand suddenly became dazzling. The abbot of the Jinshan temple was wrapped in a ball of Buddhist light. After a quarter of an hour, Li Mu opened his eyes. The Buddhist light in his hand had completely dimmed. Under his full power, Xuandu's mana was also close to being exhausted. At this time, Li Mu smelled a strange smell. He looked down at the black stain on his skin and exclaimed, "What is this?" Xuandu smiled and said, "These are the impurities left behind after your body tempering. Every time you break through a new realm, you will expel these impurities, making your body even tougher. Li Mu knew that Xuandu was helping him on purpose. He cupped his fists and said, "Thank you, master." Xuandu smiled and said to a young monk outside, "Take benefactor Li to bathe." His body was sticky and smelly. It was very uncomfortable. Li Mu bathed for more than an hour before he felt that the smell on his body was gone. Li Mu also took the opportunity to admire his own body. He discovered that his skin was whiter and more tender than before. Most importantly, Li Mu could feel the surging strength in his body. It was unprecedented, and it gave him the illusion that he could kill a cow with a single punch. This made Li Mu even more determined to cultivate Buddhist techniques. If he could train his body to the extreme, it could be big or small, soft or hard. When he encountered zombies or demons, Li Mu could also be like Xuandu and use his fists to hammer them to death. The official uniform he was wearing was dirty and could not be worn again. Xuandu asked the young monk to prepare a monk's robe for him. The size was just right. After Li Mu changed, he opened the door and found Xuandu standing outside. Xuandu's spirit was slightly lifted. He looked at Li Mu and said, "The Buddhist light from the sutra does have a miraculous healing effect. Uncle Abbott's injuries have recovered a little, but if you want to fully recover, I'm afraid you will need to treat him a few more times." Li Mu nodded and said, "Then I will do it a few more times." "Sorry to trouble you, Benefactor Li," Xuandu said. "I asked the kitchen to prepare vegetarian food. Benefactor Li, go and have some food first." Li Mu shook his head and said, "No, I have something to do at home. I will go back first." Li Mu had eaten the vegetarian food of the Jinshan temple. It was plain soup and the taste was average. Today it was Lu Hanyan's turn to cook. Li Mu had been craving for her since the morning. Seeing Li Mu's thoughts, Xuandu nodded and did not force him. He said, "In that case, I will send you down the mountain." Li Mu waved his hand and said, "No, I will go back to the yamen with Huiyuan." Before leaving, Li Mu thought of something and said to Xuandu, "By the way, I have a presumptuous request." Xuandu said, "Benefactor Li, feel free to say it." After feeling the increase in his physical strength, Li Mu wanted more. He asked Xuandu about the cultivation method of breaking through to the next realm. The first realm of Taoism usually cultivated the 7 souls. Every time one cultivated a soul, one's spiritual power would increase greatly. The first realm of Buddhism cultivated the 6 senses: the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Every time one cultivated a sense, the physical strength would increase greatly. When one cultivated to the golden body realm, the physical strength was comparable to a 4th realm demon cultivator. When one cultivated to the transcendence realm, the physical body could expand or shrink to a certain extent. It was even more powerful. After Li Mu asked, Xuandu did not refuse. He generously told him the cultivation method of the first realm of Buddhism. After cultivating the 6 senses, one's vision, hearing, smell, and taste would all increase greatly. Li Mu was looking forward to it. When he returned to the yamen, Li Qing was still not back. Han Zhe, who was about to leave, saw Li Mu and was stunned. He said with joy, "Li Mu, you have finally become a monk." Li Mu looked down at his monk's robes and shook his head. He heartlessly cut off Han Zhe's hope. "What a pity." Han Zhe looked at him with pity and said, "You look quite good in this robe." He stood at the yamen door and looked at Li Mu. Suspicion gradually appeared on his face. He did not know if it was his illusion, but he felt that the Li Mu today was different from before. He seemed to have become more handsome. Li Mu looked at him indifferently. "Why are you looking at me?" "Nothing." Han Zhe felt that he must be crazy to think that Li Mu was handsome. He waved his hand impatiently and turned to leave. During the days when Old Wang was not around, Li Mu realized that Old Wang was the mainstay of the yamen. As the secretary, he had to deal with all the big and small matters in the yamen. Every day, he was busy from morning to night, from inside to outside. Li Mu was busy in the yamen for a while before he took the dirty robe home. Lu Hanyan was standing in the yard. When Li Mu approached, she suddenly pinched her nose and frowned. "What's so smelly?" Did you fall into a cesspool? What are you dressed up for? Li Mu waved the dirty robe in his hand and said, "This official robe is dirty, so I changed it temporarily." Lu Hanyan pinched her nose and took the robe from his hand. She threw it into the basin and washed it with water several times. Then she squatted there and helped Li Mu wash it. Li Mu was a little embarrassed and said, "Leave it there. I'll wash it myself later." "I'm afraid you won't be able to wash it clean." Lu Hanyan muttered and said, "I really don't know how you made the robe so smelly." As Lu Hanyan squatted there to wash the robe, Li Mu could not stay idle. He took out the vegetables from the kitchen, rolled up his sleeves, and squatted beside her to wash the vegetables that were to be eaten today. She scrubbed the robe vigorously and said, "The bookstore found a few old books today. I put them in your study." Li Mu put the washed vegetables aside and said, "I'll look at them when I have time." The Yunyan Pavilion bookstore was now the most popular bookstore in Yangqiu County. In addition to selling books, they also collected old books to see if there was a possibility of republishing. Usually, when they came across interesting books or unorthodox Taoist books, Lu Hanyan would help Li Mu bring them back. Lu Hanyan was washing when she suddenly stopped and stared straight at Li Mu's arm. Li Mu looked at her strangely and asked, "What's wrong with you?" Lu Hanyan put down the robe and grabbed Li Mu's arm with her wet hands. She turned it over and over several times and said, "Why do I feel like you've become fairer? Your skin has also become better. It's so shiny and so smooth." She suddenly looked at Li Mu and asked, "Don't tell me you've been cultivating some kind of youth-preserving method behind our backs?" In principle, as long as Li Mu cultivated according to the method Xuandu gave him and constantly expelled the impurities in his body, his skin would become better and better. Buddhism focused on tempering the body. Including Huiyuan, all the monks in the Jinshan temple had delicate skin and tender flesh. Looking at Lu Hanyan's questioning eyes, Li Mu shook his head and said, "Of course not." Li Mu did not intend to let her cultivate both Buddhism and Taoism. She drew spiritual qi into her body every day and had fulu, which had the effect of retaining her youthful appearance. There was no need to add flowers to the brocade. More importantly, Li Mu really could not imagine what Lu Hanyan looked like when her whole body was shining with golden light and she hit people with a guzheng or a pipa. Chapter 105. You were like this before? Yu Hanyan still didn't believe it, but she wasn't sure. Because she had only seen Li Mu's body before, but she had never touched it. Her hand stroked Li Mu's arm back and forth. It was indescribably strange. Li Mu slapped her hand away and said, "I was like this before. You just didn't realize it." Yu Hanyan carefully studied him. She felt that his skin was much fairer and more tender than before. As she looked, she felt that Li Mu was quite handsome. Her face couldn't help but redden. She spat out, "I didn't realize it before, but you look really like a dog." Li Mu didn't want to be humiliated. He smiled and said, "Same to you." In terms of appearance, Li Mu could compete with Yu Hanyan. When the two of them stood together, they could be considered a golden couple. Yu Hanyan scolding Li Mu was the same as scolding herself. After eating, Li Mu began to practice the method of cultivating the six senses that Xuandu taught him. In the process of cultivation, refining the soul and cultivating the senses weren't necessary. Simply guiding the qi or chanting scriptures could increase one's mana without affecting one's breakthrough. Whether it was refining the seven souls or cultivating the six senses, it was all to develop the body to the maximum. For cultivators of the same level, those who had refined the corpse dog would have far sharper senses than those who hadn't. And those who had cultivated the six senses, their five senses and senses would also be far better than those who hadn't. The first sense that Li Mu cultivated was the vision sense. After this sense was cultivated, his eyes could clearly see things several miles away. It was a bit like the clairvoyant eye and the clairvoyant ear. As his cultivation increased, the range of this ability could see and hear would also increase. Xuandu was able to see that Li Mu didn't have the seven souls with a single glance. It was probably because of this. After cultivating for 2 hours, Li Mu took a few more arrows and practiced throwing them into the pot in the courtyard. Although the confrontation technique was powerful, Li Mu's mana was too low. He couldn't fully control it and couldn't accurately hit his target. He had wasted many opportunities in the karst cave. After returning from Zhou County, Li Mu planned to strengthen his ability in this area. He started to practice the basics of throwing pots. After he was familiar with it, he moved on to archery or darts. Before his magic power grew to the point where he could fully control this lightning technique, he could only use this method to increase his strength. After returning from Zhou County, Li Mu had taken over Lao Wang's position. Every day, he was so busy that he didn't have time to go to Clearwater Bay. These 2 days, he had some free time. On the morning of the second day, Li Mu went to Clearwater Bay. In the small house by the water, Suhi lightly glanced at Li Mu and said, "Once that little snake left, you really didn't come." Li Mu helplessly said, "Don't mess around. This time, something big really happened. I went to Zhou County a while ago. After returning, there were a bunch of things in the yamen. I just had some free time, so I came to see you." Suhi didn't blame him anymore. While eating, she asked, "Have the zombies in Zhou County been dealt with?" "It can be considered to have been dealt with." Li Mu helped her rinse a few slices of beef and said, "A flying stiff escaped, but the experts from the Fugu school went after it. Dealing with it should be only a matter of time." When the flying stiff was mentioned, Li Mu couldn't help but think of the corpse in the lake. Obviously, that was also a flying stiff. It had been nourished by spiritual aura underwater for 20 years, so its cultivation was definitely not low. Moreover, other zombies were born from the accumulation of the resentment and filth of heaven and earth. They belonged to the category of Yin and evil creatures. She, however, grew up soaking in spiritual aura. There was no corpse aura on her body. Who knew if she would mutate or become more difficult to deal with? He said with some concern, "I've asked around. The altar at the bottom of the lake is an exquisite formation. It's almost impossible to break it from the outside. We can only wait until she's strong enough to come out from inside. But at that time, I'm worried that you'll be in danger." The female corpse at the bottom of the lake was of the same origin as her. They had the same physical body and the same soul. Based on the habits of the flying stiff, the first thing she would do when she came out would be to devour Suhi. Suhi didn't care and said, "Then let her try. I'm not someone to be trifled with either." Li Mu suddenly had an idea and asked, "If we destroy her soul and you take over her body, will she come back to life?" "No, she won't." Suhi shook her head and said, "A soul body is not a primordial spirit. I can't live in another body. A soul is a soul, and a corpse is a corpse. Even if they become one, they're still evil creatures." After experiencing so many things, Li Mu's mind had long blurred the boundaries of life. If all things with self-consciousness were counted as living beings, then no matter if it was a human, a ghost, or a zombie with consciousness, they were all living beings. The only difference was that they existed in different forms. However, no matter what, he couldn't watch Suhi being devoured by that corpse. He took out a few talisman and a few strands of hair from his head and said, "If that female corpse shows signs of breaking out of the formation, use this talisman. I'll come as soon as I see it." This was an immortal guiding talisman that Li Mu got from Li Qing. This talisman also had the function of sending messages. After it was tainted with the aura of Li Mu's hair, it could find Li Mu himself. When he saw this talisman, he knew that Suhi was in trouble. Li Mu was certainly no match for that female corpse, but he had full confidence in the two of them after they merged. Even if he was facing an opponent in the creation realm, he had the confidence to compete. After coming out of the Gulf of Clearwater, Li Mu used the teleport talisman to quickly return to the county and then strolled leisurely to the county government. The county government had very few restrictions on cultivators. Li Qing and Hanzhou were not a problem for them to be late and leave early. Since Li Mu stepped into the cultivation realm, Constable Zhou obviously didn't care much about him. Moreover, from the looks of it, Constable Zhou seemed to have the intention of promoting him to constable. However, Li Mu had tactfully rejected his hints several times. After all, if he was at the same level as Li Qing, There would be no reason for him to follow her in the future. When Li Mu arrived at the county government, he was about to enter when he saw a bald man pacing back and forth in front of the county government. The sun shone on his head, making it shiny. Seeing him pacing back and forth in front of the county government, Li Mu walked over and asked politely, "Master, is there anything I can help you with?" "Master?" The bald man turned his head and looked at Li Mu angrily. He asked, "Which eye of yours saw that I looked like a monk?" Li Mu pointed to his head. The middle-aged man touched his bald head and his chest heaved a few times. He said angrily, I'm bald, I'm not a bald donkey." Li Mu looked carefully and found that there was still some hair under his head. However, the top of his head was brighter than Xuandu's and Huiyuan's. It was not strange that Li Mu recognized him at first glance. He muttered to himself, "If you're bald like this, you might as well be a monk." The bald man looked at him suspiciously. "What are you muttering about? Are you laughing at me?" Li Mu's expression turned serious. "No," he said. The bald man gave him a strong feeling. He was at least a master of the transcendent state. Li Mu could not afford to offend him. He looked at the bald man seriously and asked, "What business do you have with the county government?" The bald man said, "I'm looking for Li Qing." Li Mu was stunned and asked tentatively, "May I ask who you are?" The bald man said with a sullen expression, "I'm from the ancestral court of Fui School. Go in and find Li Qing. Tell her that Master Ma is looking for her." So it was someone from the Fugu school. Li Mu smiled and said, "So it's Master Ma. Please come in. The boss should be inside. I'll take you in." Li Mu brought the monk to the duty room. He did not see Li Qing. She must have gone on patrol. Li Mu said to the bald man, "Master Ma, please rest here for a while. The boss should be back soon." The bald man waved his hand and said, "Forget it. She's not here. It's the same if I look for your county magistrate." Li Mu suddenly realized that this bald man was from the ancestral court of Fui School and was obviously Li Qing's follower. Could it be that he was here to denounce Wu Bo for his death? Jianghu county magistrates had specially told Li Mu that if someone from the Fugu school came, he should say that he was not here. Li Mu smiled and said, "Sorry, the county magistrate is not in the county government now." "Not here?" Master Ma frowned and asked, "When will he come back?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "I don't know." Zhang Shan came out of the front hall. When he saw Li Mu, he waved his hand and said, "Li Mu, where have you been? The county magistrate has been looking for you all morning. There are several files waiting for you to sort out." He saw Master Ma beside Li Mu. He was stunned and asked, "Where did this monk come from?" Chapter 106. Uncle Ma pointed at Zhang Shan and shouted, "You are the monk. Your whole family are monks." "What are you talking about?" Zhang Shan glared at him and said, "Can't you see that I have hair?" Uncle Ma rolled up his sleeves and said angrily, "Who are you talking about?" Zhang Shan was not weak at all. He glared at him and said, "What? This is the county office. Do you want to fight?" "Uncle Ma, why are you here?" A cold voice sounded at the entrance of the office. After a while, Uncle Ma's chest heaved up and down. He looked at Zhang Shan, who was hiding at the door, and said to Li Qing with dissatisfaction, "You should discipline your subordinates. They are too unruly." Li Qing poured a cup of tea for him and asked, "Uncle Ma, why did you come to the county office?" Uncle Ma drank the tea and said, "Wu Bo is dead. Our fifth branch has suffered a great loss. Although we don't blame the county office, he died in the line of duty. The county office has to give us an explanation." Martial Uncle Ma spoke with a strong sense of righteousness, but Li Mu did not see how sad or angry he was. He drank a few cups of tea and suddenly said, "I have to talk to your county magistrate about this matter. Take me to him." Zhang county magistrates did not want to see people from Fulu school, but Zhang Shan had unintentionally betrayed him, so he could not hide anymore. When Zhang Shan came out, there was a big footprint on his butt. He said to Uncle Ma with an unlucky face, "The county magistrate wants to see you." In the front hall of the county office, Zhang county magistrates came out with a smile and said, "Honorable guests, please forgive me for not going out to welcome you. Although Fulu School was powerful in the North County, the entire North County was part of the Great Zhou. Uncle Ma didn't hold back. He smiled and said, "County Magistrate, you're too polite." Jianghu County Magistrate said, "The zombie disaster in Zhou County almost spread to our county. It was all thanks to the experts from Fulu School." Uncle Ma said, "That's what we should do. As cultivators, we should protect the common people." Jianghu County Magistrate stood up and poured tea for him, saying, "Since you've come from afar, why don't you try some of our county's best tea?" Uncle Ma had already drunk a few cups of tea, but he couldn't refuse Jianghu County Magistrate's enthusiasm. After drinking a few cups of tea, his stomach was a little bloated. He wanted to mention Wu Bo's matter, but he was repeatedly interrupted by Jianghu County Magistrates. Jianghu County Magistrates talked about random things and changed the topic, so he couldn't get to the point. After drinking another cup of tea, Uncle Ma finally couldn't help but say, "To be honest, County Magistrate, I'm here because of Marshal Nephew Wu's death." Jianghu County Magistrate said with a sorrowful expression, "I'm also very sorry about Constable Wu's death. This is not only a loss to Fulu School, but also a loss to the Yangqiu County government. These days, every time I think about this, I feel bitter and hateful. I wish I could grind that zombie's bones to dust." Uncle Ma looked at Jianghu County Magistrates in a daze. If someone didn't know the truth and saw him like this, they probably wouldn't think that Wu Bo was a disciple of Fulu School, but a close friend of Jianghu County Magistrates. This made him somewhat unable to bring himself to say the words of reprimand. However, his main purpose for coming here wasn't to blame anyone. He patted Jianghu County Magistrates on the shoulder and comforted him, "Things are unpredictable. County Magistrate, you don't have to be too sad. My condolences, my condolences." Jianghu County Magistrate's eyes were filled with tears. "My heart aches. This is all my fault. I shouldn't have let him go to Zhou County." Uncle Ma hurriedly said, "This isn't County Magistrate's fault. County Magistrate, you don't have to blame yourself." Jianghu County Magistrates wiped away his tears and said, "Let's not talk about these sad things. Come, fellow Taoist Ma, have some tea. I can't drink anymore, I can't drink anymore." Uncle Ma waved his hands and said, "Addicts Jiang, I came to Yangqiu County this time because I have a favor to ask of you." After being stirred up by Jianghu County Magistrates, he had completely forgotten about Wu Bo's matter. Jianghu County Magistrates smiled and asked, "May I know what fellow Taoist Ma wants?" Uncle Ma sighed and said, "Addicts Jiang knows about Wu Bo's potential. Our branch treated him as an important seedling and nurtured him. Now that he's fallen, it's a great loss for us. I came down the mountain this time because I want to ask Addicts Jiang to help me find a few good seedlings. Please forgive me for being unable to help you with this matter." Jianghu County Magistrate's expression turned serious when he heard this. He sat up straight and said, "Fellow Taoist Ma, don't tell me you don't know that this is strictly forbidden by the Imperial Court?" Of course Uncle Ma knew this. The reason why the relationship between Fulu School and the Great Zhou Court was not close was because the Imperial Court had never opened the door for them in this matter. Of course, the Imperial Court also had its own considerations. Although the 8 characters of a person's birth were simple, in the eyes of cultivators, they were not just numbers. It was very simple to indirectly take a person's life through their birth characters. Moreover, if those with special constitutions were found out by the heretical cultivation, their lives would be in danger. Therefore, the Great Zhou Court strictly forbade people outside the government from contacting the household register. He calmly took out a letter from his chest and handed it to Jianghu County Magistrates. "This is a letter from the county governor. Addicts Jiang can take a look first." Jianghu County Magistrates opened the letter. The first thing he looked at was the county governor's seal at the bottom of the letter. He placed his hand on it and closed his eyes to feel it. After confirming that there was no mistake, he read the contents of the letter. Uncle Ma smiled and said, "It's not just Yangqiu County. This time, the county governor has made an exception for the 13 counties in the northern county. I think that our Fulu School and the county governor should be able to trust Addicts Jiang, right?" Jianghu County Magistrates read the letter carefully. The contents of the letter were exactly the same as what Uncle Ma had said. Perhaps it was because the Fulu school had done a lot to quell the zombie disaster in Zhou County, but the county governor had specifically stated in the letter that he should make things easier for the people of Fulu school. He had no choice but to obey the county governor's orders. Jianghu County magistrates thought for a moment and said, "Although the Fulu school has done a great job in quelling the northern county, I can only check your household registration for 3 years. Within 3 years, if there are any newborns born in Yangqiu County with special constitutions, I can tell you. If it's beyond the 3-year limit, I won't check." Uncle Ma nodded and said, 3 years is enough. Jianghu County magistrates added, "Also, only the constables of the Yangqiu County government can check the household registration information. Constable Li and Constable Han can't participate. For cultivators, it was taboo to let others know or check other people's birth characters." Uncle Ma didn't have any objections. He smiled and said, "We'll listen to Addicts Zhang's arrangements." Today, Li Mu only stayed at the yamen for 4 hours before he strolled back home. It wasn't that he was slacking off, but that Jianghu County magistrates had given all the cultivators in the yamen a day off. Only Zhang Shan, Li Si, and a few other constables who hadn't cultivated were left. They went to the house and closed the doors and windows tightly. They acted mysteriously. No one knew what they were doing. Li Mu wasn't curious about this. He enjoyed this rare leisure time very much. He opened the door and walked into the yard. After a while, Lu Hanyan flew over from the other side of the yard wall. She asked in confusion, "Why did you come to the yamen so early today?" Li Mu took out the books in the study to dry. He said, "There aren't many things to do in the yamen today." Lu Hanyan said, "Wanwan and I are going to wash clothes later. Do you have any dirty clothes? I'll help you wash them." Li Mu took out 2 dirty clothes and handed them to her. He said, "Thank you." He didn't stand on ceremony with Lu Hanyan. Usually, Lu Hanyan and Wanwan would help him wash clothes. When they encountered heavy work like moving things, they would come to Li Mu. Lu Hanyan waved her hand. She took Li Mu's dirty clothes and flew back to her yard. Li Mu took out a chair and sat comfortably on it. As he basked in the sun, he took a book from the stone table to read. These days, Yangqiu County wasn't peaceful. It was only recently that it finally became peaceful. Li Mu basked in the sun. The sound of Lu Hanyan and Wanwan washing clothes came from next door. Everything was so harmonious. After going through so many twists and turns, Li Mu couldn't help but feel a trace of the stability of the modern world and the peace of life. He looked at the book and found the contents very familiar. Li Mu flipped open the cover and found the 3 words, "Supernatural Records," written on it. Li Mu had already read this book in the yamen. He wanted to put it down, but his hand paused. He clearly remembered that there was a missing page in the middle of the record of the supernatural in the county office. At that time, Li Mujing was reading it with great interest, so this was still fresh in his memory. Yunyan Pavilion didn't know where this book came from. Although it was a bit old, it didn't lack pages. Li Mu flipped to the missing pages and started reading again. These pages talked about the yin-yang 5 elements body. It was closely related to Li Mu and Lu Hanyan. Lu Hanyan had obviously read this book and even made a mark on it. The place where she made the mark was a body of pure yin and pure yang. It was a natural body for dual cultivation. The author also expressed his point of view here. The general idea was that a body of pure yin and pure yang was 1 in a million. It was even rarer to have a suitable gender and age. If one met such a person, they might as well dual cultivate together. Otherwise, it would be a waste of God's gift. Lu Hanyan finished washing clothes. When she came over, she happened to see Li Mu reading that page. The two of them looked at each other and the atmosphere was a bit awkward. Li Mu coughed lightly and took the initiative to break the awkwardness. He said, "Dual cultivation depends on the feelings." Although Lu Hanyan didn't think about this, she was obviously despised. She snorted and said, "After so many years, have you found your feelings?" A single dog mocked another single dog. Li Mu asked back, "You haven't found it either." "I don't want to find it." "I don't want to find it either." Li Mu suddenly looked at Lu Hanyan and said, You said that after a few years, if one of us is still unmarried and the other is still unmarried, then Lu Hanyan raised her eyebrows. Then what? Li Mu sighed. Then we'll be too miserable. But then he denied this possibility and said, even Zhang Shan can get a wife. I shouldn't. Li Mu sighed and continued reading. The next page was a missing page in the county government's book. Li Mu finally connected the content about the yin-yang and 5 elements bodies that he saw last time. Pure yin, pure yang, and the 5 elements. These 7 innate bodies naturally gather qi. One day of cultivation is equivalent to several days of cultivation for ordinary people. The souls of the 5 elements and yin and yang also have the power of creation. If Dongxian can gather all of them and refine them with the souls of thousands of living people, there will be a chance of transcendence. Transcendence was the name for the 7th realm of Taoism. This sentence meant that if Dongxian cultivators could gather the souls of the yin-yang and 5 elements and refine them with a large amount of soul power, there would be a glimmer of hope for them to advance to the transcendent realm. However, this method was too vicious. Not only did one have to gather the souls of the yin-yang and 5 elements, but they also had to kill a large number of innocent people to extract the power of their souls. This was the work of the heretical cultivation. No wonder this page was torn out in the county government's book. Taking a step back, although this method was heaven-defying, it was not easy. The heretical cultivation that killed one person would be wanted by the government. If they killed thousands of people, they would have long been eliminated by the righteous path. How could they advance to the next realm? Moreover, gathering the souls of the yin-yang and 5 elements was easier said than done. Until now, there were only a few people that he knew of who had such a body constitution. Li Mu himself had the pure yang body. Lu Hanyan had the pure yin body. Zhao Yong had the fire elemental body, but he was already dead. Ren Yuan had the wood elemental body, but because he became a heretical cultivation, his head fell to the ground. Wu Bo had the earth elemental body, and his corpse was personally burned by Li Mu. Li Mu was stunned for a moment. He suddenly realized that he knew a lot of people with special body constitutions. Besides him and Lu Hanyan, no one had a good ending. Strictly speaking, Li Mu himself had already died once. In the past few months, there were people with the pure yang, fire elemental, wood elemental, and earth elemental bodies by Li Mu's side. Due to various reasons, their bodies died and their souls scattered. The sun above his head was scorching. Li Mu suddenly felt a chilly wind blowing around him, causing him to shiver. Lu Hanyan looked at the layer of fine bumps on his arm. She looked up at the sun and asked doubtfully, "Are you cold?" Chapter 107. Lu Hanyan saw that Li Mu's expression was strange, so she walked over and asked, "What's wrong?" "It's nothing." Li Mu read the description on the supernatural records, again, and shook his head in amusement. Zhao Yong died because he killed his fiancée in order to curry favor with the governor. According to the laws of Great Zhou, he should be beheaded. Ren Yuan died because he went astray in his cultivation and harmed people's lives, so he was also beheaded according to the law. These 2 people were both beheaded at the entrance of the market. With one slash, their souls were scattered. As for Wu Bo, he died at the hands of the flying stiff, and Li Mu personally burned his corpse. As for the death of Li Mu's predecessor, because he was reincarnated, the Yamen didn't investigate too deeply. The deaths of the 4 people were unrelated, and it was very difficult to link them to the heretical cultivation of Dongxian. He was too sensitive. He put the supernatural records aside and picked up another book to read. After a quarter of an hour, Li Mu put down the book in his hand and picked up the supernatural records again. He didn't read a single word of the book just now. He flipped to the page of the supernatural records and read it again. In the end, Li Mu took a deep breath and stood up from the chair. Even if he believed that this was just a coincidence, he still decided to go to the Yamen to take a look. Lu Hanyan saw him hurriedly walk out and chased after him. She asked loudly, "Didn't you already go to the Yamen? Where are you going? Are you coming back for dinner tonight?" Li Mu was already on the street when he remembered something important. He turned back and said to Lu Hanyan, Come with me. Lu Hanyan was confused. Where are we going? Li Mu said, to the county yamen. Lu Hanyan frowned. Why are we going to the county yamen? Li Mu shook his head and said, don't ask so many questions. Come with me. Lu Hanyan didn't know why Li Mu wanted her to go to the yamen. After hesitating for a moment, she nodded and said, then wait. I'll tell Wan Wan. The reason why Li Mu brought Lu Hanyan along was because he knew that Lu Hanyan had a pure yin body. Out of the 7 yin-yang 5 elements, 4 of them were already dead. If that was really the case, then her situation would be very dangerous. Better to be safe than sorry. Li Mu could only be at ease if she was by his side. Li Mu and Lu Hanyan walked into the county yamen and saw Hanzhe, Li Qing, and Uncle Ma standing in the yard. When Hanzhe saw him, he was stunned for a moment and asked, why are you back? Li Qing saw Lu Hanyan. After a short moment of astonishment, she smiled at her and nodded. Lu Hanyan also smiled back. Li Mu ignored Hanzhe and looked at Li Qing as a greeting. Then he took Lu Hanyan to Old Wang's duty room. Old Wang's duty room was half a study and half a file room. Lu Hanyan stood in the duty room and asked in confusion, why did you ask me to come to the county yamen? Li Mu took down a stack of files from the bookshelf and said, sit here for a while. We'll talk about other things later. If this series of events were related and someone was really collecting souls of the 5 elements of yin and yang for cultivation, then the body of the metal element and the body of the water element would definitely be indispensable. The body of the 5 elements was rare. In such a short period of time, the probability of 5 people with such rare constitutions all dying by coincidence was almost non-existent. Compared to this, the possibility of heretical cultivation collecting souls of the 5 elements of yin and yang for cultivation was greater. This stack of files contained the cases that had not been solved by the yamen in Yangqiu County for the past 6 months. From these files, it was easy to find out who had died in the past 6 months due to bizarre reasons. Seeing Li Mu's serious expression, Lu Hanyan did not ask more and sat quietly by the side. Li Mu put the files in front of him and opened them one by one. According to the information of the deceased's horoscope, he deduced whether they had the body of yin and yang or the body of the 5 elements. Lu Hanyan sat beside him and looked at him curiously with her head tilted. In the courtyard, Hanzhe's gaze was fixed on Li Qing. In this short 15 minutes, Li Qing had glanced at the watchroom more than 10 times. Hanzhe's lips curled into a smile. He thought to himself, Li Mu, oh Li Mu. How stupid of him to bring another woman to the county yamen. Looking at Li Qing's expression, it's obvious that she cares a lot. Let's see how he explains it to Li Qing later. At the thought of this, Hanzhe could not help but gloat. The smile on his face became even brighter. As he smiled, he seemed to understand something. He looked at Li Qing and then at the watchroom. His mood suddenly dropped. At this moment, he did not know whether Li Mu hoped that Li Qing would care or not when he brought another woman to the county yamen. In the watchroom, Li Mu had already calculated that none of the people who died in accidents in Yangqiu County in the past 6 months had a special body constitution. This made him heave a sigh of relief. The stone in his heart was also lifted. Sure enough, he had thought too much. Lu Hanyan saw that Li Mu had been counting on his fingers. She asked, what are you calculating? Li Mu said, according to their horoscope, I'm calculating their body constitution. Lu Hanyan remembered that Li Mu had asked her horoscope before he found out that she had a pure yin body. She immediately became interested and said, how do I calculate? Teach me. Li Mu handed the book to her and said, it's written here. Read it yourself. Lu Hanyan pursed her lips. She took the supernatural records and read it herself. After reading for a while, she began to try using the files that Li Mu had calculated just now. Li Mu had already checked them. None of them had a special body constitution. He took out a few files from the shelf at the side and handed them to Lu Hanyan. He said, try these. These files were all closed cases in the yamen. There were no suspicious points in them. Li Mu did not look at them again. The files on Zhao Yong and Ren Yuan were all in there. It should be able to give Lu Hanyan a sense of achievement from learning new knowledge. After handing these files to Lu Hanyan, Li Mu leaned back in the chair and let out a long sigh. Just now at home, he was really frightened by the description in the supernatural records. What Dongxian heretical cultivation, what transcendence, yin and yang, the 5 elements, and the souls of 10,000 people. Li Mu was scared witless and had goosebumps. The 5 elements body was not common. The reason why Li Mu encountered so many was because of his identity as a bailiff. Zhao Yong's death was his own fault. He could not blame anyone else. His life started because of the fire element body, and also ended because of the fire element body. Ren Yuan also willingly fell into the evil path. That was why he ended up with his soul scattered. The wood element body allowed him to embark on the path of cultivation. It also sent him to the market, under the executioner's knife. And Wu Bo, he died in the hands of the flying stiff. His death was also not suspicious. The deaths of these people, no matter what, could not be linked together. He leaned back in the chair, thinking about how to explain to Li Qing in a while. Should he invite her home to eat hot pot, or spicy hot pot? Lu Hanyan held the files, pinched her fingers, and calculated with interest. After a moment, she said happily, I calculated this Ren Yuan has the wood element body. This Xiao Yong has the fire element body. This Wu Bo has the earth element body. This Zhang Dafu has the metal element body. This Wang Xiaowei has the water element body. Lu Hanyan frowned, looked at Li Mu with a questioning gaze, and said, I only calculated a few, how come the 5 elements are all complete? Is this book written randomly? Crush. Li Mu bounced up from the chair, but because the movement was too big, he and the chair flipped over to the ground. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.